Happy Halloween, Doug. How you doing?
Happy Halloween to you, sir. How are you?
Spooked out by our...
Yeah, I know you get the creepy background there. Ooh.
Well, we come into a creepy time in our country here, leading up to the 2020 election. That's where Donald Trump is the incumbent, squaring off against Joe Biden. We usually don't talk politics on our Friday show, but when we do, we don't get. I mean, I see those numbers go up when we do. So we don't talk politics because why not? It's not a politics show. It's more of a we like to call it a variety. So some people call it a beer show, but we're going to talk politics today, and we're looking forward to it. Actually, we have some of our friends here, and some of them will hopefully jump in later. So we're going to be here a little bit. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce who part of our panel, and then we'll get into all this. Whew, there's a lot to get into.
All the fun stuff.
But it's only 3 days away, man. So first and foremost, we're going to bring in my friend Carla Lauder. And she has one of the best beer names ever, Lauder. It's fucking great. But anyway, so we're going to bring her on and find out where she's from and go from there. So hi, Carla. Did I get that last name right?
Hello. Yes, you did. Of course you did. Of course you
did. Beautiful. So hi, Carla. How you doing? How was this election season finding you? Tell everybody where you're at. And I was going to say, like favorite politician or someone. Talk about a politician in your state where you're from, and how the context of how that person affects what's going on now.
Cool. So this whole election season, the adjective is just anxiety. I have anxiety like crazy. But I'm up here in Maine. I'm in Lisbon, Maine, which is about 45 minutes outside of Portland, Maine, which is probably the only town in Maine anybody's ever heard of. And my favorite Maine politician is Angus King. He's actually an independent senator. He's one of the few that's actually a registered independent. But the one that I'm sure we're going to come to at some point today is Susan Collins, who is up for re-election, and we're doing whatever humanly possible to try to not make that occur. So she is not my favorite by any means at all, and I am hoping very, very much that we can kind of get her out of here. So.
Are you concerned?
Yeah, I'm going to say she's very concerned about your.
I'm very concerned. And in the last 3 days, she's said some horribly stupid stuff. So she's not helping herself. So
I don't ever see. Okay, so yeah, let's get our other guest on before we
get our other panelists on. Then we can go crazy.
Oh my goodness, this lady. Anyway, so who we have up next is our friend Jeff. We just saw him last night for the first time on our show. He's a food scientist, an at-home dad. Yeah, and well, he can tell you the rest. What's up, Jeff? How you doing?
Good to see you guys again.
I feel like we did this recently.
What's that?
I feel like we did this recently.
I know, I kind of do. I said to my husband, they invited me back on. I said, but tonight, because of daylight savings, there's zero way that I'm going to be able to pull the same kind of hours with my toddlers. So, but yeah, thank you. It was so much fun.
Excellent. So tell us everybody where you're from, and I don't know if you want to talk about a politician that's either close to you, location wise, or close to your heart.
Sure. I don't really have a politician close to my heart other than Elizabeth Warren. I'm not going to lie. She's somebody that would really be close to my heart, albeit not from my state. I'm originally from Long Island, New York, but currently my husband and I have been living in the greater Philadelphia area, I guess, in Pennsylvania for the better part of 15 years now. In the local Philadelphia politics, probably one of my favorite politicians would be Brian Sims. If you're not familiar with him, great senator, out gay senator, very important, and has been pretty outspoken. But yeah, he would probably be my favorite right now. And then Madeline Dean. She's been rocking it. I've been very happy with how she's communicating with everybody. So, yeah.
Doug, you didn't get the answer to the question.
Well, I think everybody knows I'm from upstate New York, Binghamton area. our district actually, I'm going to speak to a local politician named Anthony Brindisi, who is actually in a pretty tight race because, contrary to popular belief, New York isn't all just a giant liberal swath. It's got a lot of rural parts to it that are really conservative. I believe Trump carried our area in the election, but like not in the state, obviously. So Brindisi's running against a person named Claudia Tenney, who was in office, and Brindisi voted him out or won over him. And it's close again because she's a Trump acolyte, so she just kind of parrots all that stuff. And there's a lot of people. The amount of Trump signs I see, and I see a lot more Biden-Harris ones now too, which is heartening. But at the same time, I see a lot of Trump stuff. So
What's the politician's name? Did you say Brindisi?
Yeah, Brindisi.
And this is someone that I guess you look up to. You like? He does.
More just he's a local election guy, and that's something that was the last election. It actually took them, I think, a couple weeks to actually get the vote figured out. So,
wow. The only reason I bring the name Brindisi up, it's appropriate. You guys have a drinking show or beer show, right? Do you know what the term Brindisi is from La Traviata? It's the drinking song. Anyway, so that's what it made me think.
I know that.
Oh, very funny. So cheers to that.
Yeah, bring on the deep dive already. That's good.
Anyway, goodbye.
That's just a local one. I mean, I really, really adore Elizabeth Warren as well. AOC, I fucking love her. She's awesome.
Yes.
I also want to give a shout out to our governor here too. Janet Mills has been doing an awesome job with managing coronavirus in our state. Honestly, like Maine has literally been the best state of all of them, and as far as the number of cases and deaths and whatnot, if you do it per capita and stuff, we've been doing a really good job, and it's because of her leadership. And I couldn't be happier that she's in office compared to the last guy. So
that's great.
Want to give her a shout out because she's killing it.
And shout out to Afro Beer Chick, Shalonda Way. Hi. She says hi. Hey, Carla.
Hi, Shalonda.
Oh, you're welcome to come on if you want. Just hit me on the DMs and I can slide you this invite. ABC. We get right on. Anyway, I have, it's weird because I get some of my fights that I get on with online are not really directly like left versus right fights. They're just more like ideology fights or theology or like theoretical ideas. One of the things that I don't like when people say all politicians are bad, and it really annoys me to tears because it really doesn't do anything for the good ones. So I actually have a few. I could talk an hour about all the politicians that I really like in this country, and I think if you really, really pay attention, you can find the good ones. You can find the bad ones too, and we got all that. So it's really hard for me to just narrow down to one. But I'm really excited about all the Senate races. They really, really got me in grip. So I'm just going to say Jamie Harrison. I'm going to say Mark Kelly, and I'm going to say John Ossoff, who recently just came on my radar. I wasn't really giving him any attention, to be honest, because I thought Purdue had that locked up down there. But as soon as I recently saw him, and you guys saw those clips from the recent debate, I mean, this guy is really, really good. He's I don't know. So yeah.
He was on fire.
I'm not really enamored. It's hard for me to get enamored by any public figure. But so when I usually take note and I'm like, oh, you might be a good one. And then I follow up. That's how it works. So we got two more people to bring on here, and then we're really going to deep dive into it. I'm going to bring in my friend. Everybody knows him, or a lot of people know him, JHG. He's the president of the National At-Home Dad Network. He's been on the show 600 times, it feels like. How you doing, JHG?
I'm doing good, man. How are you? How's everybody? All right. Yeah.
I feel a positive vibe tonight already. I'm feeling good.
Yeah, good.
Oh no, I feel fine right now. Just like
we haven't had the conversation yet.
Right. Ask me on Tuesday. That's
right.
So JHG, quickly
I'm with Carla.
So we picked a good day for this, right? Is that
there you go.
Yeah. JHG, tell us where you're from, and give us a politician that you favorite or like.
I live in Alexandria, Virginia, so I'm just outside of DC. A local, well, semi-local is Mark Warren, our Democratic senator, U.S. senator. He's one of the guys that I keep an eye on, and I'm grateful that he has been sitting in the Senate on I think it was the Judiciary Committee. No, it was not the Judiciary Committee. What was the other committee he was on? Oh, maybe
8,000 committees.
I know there are so many of them, and I'm also with Jeff here, Elizabeth Warren. A little near and dear to my heart, having been in Massachusetts for so long. She's just been amazing from the start. No hold barred, goes right in on people and doesn't pull punches, which is exactly what the Senate needs right now. So
that she also owns her mistakes, and I like that. It's a quality you don't see in politicians. She doesn't backpedal when she's caught and stuff. And I really appreciated that, especially the way she handled some of her identity politics early on in her, sort of race to become president. And it was that moment, the way she chose to handle it. Yeah. I mean, of course, Trump's bullying, whatever. She can fight with anybody. I don't really no, she can't stand with him. Or how do they say it in Mean Girls? She can't. No one can sit with her that way. But anyway.
Well, that's that you look for qualities in people that you hold yourself. So that's one of the qualities that I hold is I make mistakes and I own up to them instead of backing away or running away from them. So that's what I really appreciate about politicians like Elizabeth Warren. So
agreed.
Yes, sir.
Time for me to bring on another one of our panelists. He is from Northern. Oh no! He's going to tell us. Rod, how you doing?
I was like, don't.
Yeah, I need to shut up. I need to figure out my lane here. So anyway. Rod, how you doing? Tell everybody. Tell everybody where you're from. You're from an interesting part of the country. Looking at very interesting dynamic where you're at. And tell us about a politician you like or maybe not like.
Okay. Well, I'm actually in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area. So from New Jersey originally, but live here now. So I kind of see all different dichotomies that come through. Obviously, I'm in Mitch McConnell's state, but we got Mitch McConnell, Randy Paul, and Thomas Massey. But then across the river, we have some stuff there where we have kind of like Democrats aren't really Democrats either. But it's kind of like I'm not big on either party. I'm a registered independent. I can never sign on with either party because I don't believe in any of them 100%. Although anybody that I would actually be down with would be probably the Squad. Is the only one because they're saying stuff that needs to be said and need to be said for a long time. And then also, I'm liking Katie Price. I'm like Katie Price doesn't pull punches. I heard someone mention Warren. Warren, I've got issues with her a little bit because she's actually, I work in the financial area. She does some stuff that benefited her financially too. So, I mean, they all get to a point where they start taking a little bit here and there. But I'm for term limits. So I want people out after a certain period of time. That will stop a lot of the BS, in my opinion. So I'm liking the people that are kind of talking that talk right now.
Who is Katie Price?
She is one of the Minnesota's. She's a senator or congressman there. She's the one that asked like a lot of the hard questions and broke them down as good as some of the veterans that have been there.
Is it Katie Porter?
Katie Porter. I'm sorry, Katie Porter.
Okay.
Yeah, the lady with the whiteboard.
Whiteboard.
Yeah, she breaks people down like crazy. Yeah,
I love her.
She's like, let me do the math for you.
Yes. Yep. Really, right? And then what's that number?
Yeah.
And
yeah. Love her.
Porter is one person I talk about later for sure. So thanks, Rod, for showing up here. We're gonna want to dive into that Elizabeth Warren a little bit because we got some Elizabeth Warren fans. I'm one of them. So I wanted her to win, but didn't happen. But we're gonna bring on my friend who's another person. I don't know how we did this, Doug, or we got a really good panel as far as people from around the country. This guy could really speak to. I mean, presidential nominees were literally in the state 6 times today, so or something like that. Half of them, they all live there. Jay, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
They've been living in your state, man. How has your state? And then you guys have been dealing with your state's governor is very controversial.
That woman in Michigan.
Yeah. What's going on there? And tell us a little bit about your politics history, and then we'll get our last panelist on here, and we'll be ready to roll.
Yeah. So, I mean, things were doing well here. That woman here in Michigan had to back off because they went to the state Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, of course, is still leaning right and sided against her and said that she went too far with her power and her orders. So they kind of opened things back up too quickly, and we pulled a mini Florida here. Everybody's getting sick. It's been interesting. My kids are completely remote by choice, just because we kind of predicted that the numbers were going to go up. But I mean, locally on other levels, as you said, I'm here in Michigan. I'm outside of Detroit, closer to Ann Arbor, in Washtenaw County. Somebody that I'm for here locally is a civil rights attorney, Eli Savitt. He was endorsed by both Warren and Bernie Sanders. He's running for our local prosecutor section. And I think I really like him because he aligns both with Sanders and Warren. And on the prosecutorial side, he's very into reforming the justice system. But yeah, I think as for what's going on here, I'm a complete fan of our governor, Whitmer. I'm all for her. I think that what she was doing was right, and I appreciate you having me on here.
Excellent. Real quick before we bring in our last fella here, I don't know if you guys saw the late breaking news clip of the guy who got thrown in jail because he was in this scam, this whole thing with Whitmer, and now he wants to be let out of prison because of COVID.
Yeah,
because of COVID. Yes,
right. I know we all send our hearts out to him. A little violin for him.
Tots and pears. Tots and pears.
Can I also make
put him in a cell with Bubba? Let Bubba handle him.
Can I also make a point that those guys also were going to kidnap trying to kidnap the governor of JHG state?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, they were. Yes, that was the second plot.
Yep. Sorry, my nickname for him is Governor Blackface. Sorry.
Yeah.
Too soon or not, but anyway.
Hey.
A little quiet there.
I'll drink some tea for you right there with that one, Governor Blackface.
Too soon?
Ain't too soon.
Never too soon.
Well, and on that note, we have my last friend is going to join us. I think maybe, I'm not sure. Might have some more coming in, but he's from a state that's interesting in its own way, and we'll let him talk about that. But it's not an influential state, unfortunately, Mike. I mean, it is. Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Good to see you all.
Where are you from, Mike?
So I'm from San. Oh, I'm just so excited to finally get to reconnect with all of y'all. It's really good to see you. Thank you for having me on. I'm from San Francisco, and I know these guys through our online dad groups. So it's just really exciting to see you and hear everybody talk and get to meet some new friends. So thanks for having me on.
Cheers, Mike. Tell us a little bit about are any politicians out there that you like? Anybody you want to talk about that we haven't spoke about, or anybody you want to accent?
So I wasn't prepared for this, but I think it's an interesting story. My daughter played soccer on a good team in San Francisco, and I got to know this fellow parent on the sidelines really well, and we just became good friends, and we're good friends to this day. And it turns out that back in, I believe it was 2004, she is good buddies with Kamala Harris, and they gathered. Kamala Harris wanted to run for DA against Terrence Hallinan, kind of a long-term San Francisco political person. And so they got together in my friend's living room and were like, how the hell do you run for office? Like, what forms do we do? How do you fundraise? Who can we get on their committee? Like, how do you start this process? And it was so confusing to them just to check all the dots and cross all the T's, that my friend Andrea started this group after that to make it much simpler for Democrat women to run for office across the country. And she really wanted to start taking over like school boards and city councils and state legislatures.
Good.
And Emerge America, as it's known today, has offices throughout the country. I think there's maybe like 10 states or so that we're not quite in yet. But it played a key role, and I think it was 2017, in flipping Virginia. I think there were 11 seats in the state legislature that went from Republican to Democrat, and it flipped the state blue. And I think 9 of those women were Emerge alums. So I've got a special thing for Kamala Harris. She's good buddies with my buddy, and my good buddy is doing a lot of really great work across the country. So that's where I'm from.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
that's super
Thank your friend for flipping my state.
Oh, is that where you're from?
Yeah, I live in Virginia, Northern Virginia, but
Danica Rove, all the way. She's an Emerge alum.
Hey, and Mike, if memory serves me correctly, you know where I'm from here in Ypsilanti, correct?
I'm so jealous that you get to have Cluck's hot dogs whenever you want. I was born in Ypsilanti, Michigan, so we've got that in common.
Well, and that's good to hear because I believe that as a person who is an independent voter, never been affiliated with either one, but I'm definitely, if they call an independent leaning left person, that's where I'm at. And this is one of the things that I think we all kind of, if you're a left leaning or a left person, have a problem with the Democrats, which is we don't think that they put in the ground game as much as the GOP does. And the latest GOP person that they put on the court is the great example of this, how they pretty much groomed her from jump to do what she's doing, and then they followed her the whole way and then did the whole thing. And this is we as to hear what Mike just said about Democrats is good because ultimately as an independent voter, I want to balance there between two good sides. I don't think we have two good sides now. So I want to lean to the one side. So I like to hear, Mike, that's fantastic. And, that's really great, actually. We need to hear more of those stories. And when Democrats are doing that, we don't hear this. And I just feel, sometimes I just think we feel the results of the GOP, AKA like, the Supreme Court thing there, which I guess is a good place to start this whole conversation, which is packing the courts. And where all you guys at on this? I mean, I think we're all generally left-leaning people. I think Rod and I kind of pull us a little bit to the independent a little bit, but I'm still left-leaning. I'm not even going to deny that. And I shouldn't because, again, I don't believe both sides will fit. So I don't know who, not at this point, maybe, Gore and Bush era, we had that, or maybe Reagan and Jimmy Carter era, we had both sides where people really gave about the country and weren't trying to just take whatever they could take for us and just run. So anybody want to start off on where you're at with packing the courts? The definition of packing the courts. I don't know if we want to go into that rabbit hole, but I believe that the Republicans, by doing what they did, are packing the courts.
Looks like Rob's ready to go.
Yeah.
My opinion is that I think that the other, I think the packing the courts for the Democrats should happen, but it's not necessarily packing the courts. I believe a more diverse Supreme Court is what we all need. And if it's 13, then there's more of a chance of more Black people, more women, more minorities, more Hispanics, more Puerto Ricans are going to be on that court instead of 7 white guys. Or 6 white guys.
Right. It's not.
I don't count. Yeah, I'll be the Black person on the panel to say I don't count Clarence Thomas as a Black guy. I was a Black guy. His whole fucking agenda is white. Sorry. So who wants to take this? Anybody want to jump? I said a whole lot of shit.
Well,
go ahead, Jane. I was going to say something. Go ahead.
The one thing I will say, and then Rob, you could. I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't know that it's packing the courts as it's expanding the courts, because what we have is not enough now. It is trying to create an equal playing field. And that's what talking to the point you made just a few minutes earlier, there's not balance anymore. And it's trying to tip things back because the Democrats have done such a poor job of playing the long game and making sure that they look into the future about the court, about the Senate, about government in general. they think short game versus long game. So to me, it's not packing the court as much as it is expanding the court, and let alone filling the seats that have been unfilled for so long, and getting in the kind of people that will help to create equilibrium there. But that's just a quick aside. So Rob, go ahead.
All right.
Who's next?
Well, I was going to say, Carl, did you want to say something there?
No, you go right.
Well, I was going to say, and let me know if I go too long, because me and ABC, we did a podcast and we blew it up on her channel. But I mean, there's a lot of thoughts in his mind here, even though it's inebriated sometimes.
Rob,
shout out to Carla too, because I'm a big fan of Carl, so I'm happy to be on a panel with her. So I was going to give a shout out for that.
Thanks, Rod.
But here's just perspectives that I have as a black man in America. The courts have always been packed. They've been packed ever since it was done. It was always that situation. So looking at the justice system, no matter who is in party, we've always kind of dealt with that more as a black person in society or black families in society. So to me, it's not a big surprising thing there. Now, if you're looking at the history of the Supreme Court, the court has not always been 9 justices on there as well. There was time when it went to 10. There was a time when it went down to 6. So this whole thing has been shifted over time. And when you look at some of the other things, we grew the House of Representatives because of more representation for states. We grew the Senate because each state gets 2 people. We've never really grown out for all the amount of people we have now that we have on the Supreme Court. So think of all the different belief systems you have out there, and you're going to have just 9 people going to know what everybody thinks or have a piece from every part of society. It's not enough there. So to get it up to like an 11 or a 12 or even a 13, I prefer it to be an odd number, just in case there's a tie break situation. You have that situation there. It's not a new thing. What you're having is these parties playing on the fear what the GOP is actually done for the longest time, and they're building up a thing because it is not to attack their base fully, but I feel like a lot of their base doesn't do the research that's out there to be done. So they don't know a lot of this stuff. And so they take a lot of things that they don't go full into. They get a piece here off a blog or a piece off of that. And like, did you really dig down? Do you look at other sources besides, Breitbart or Fox, and look kind of where other stuff is coming from? Because the only way you can do that, and I can say that with the people on the left too, you can't just look at MSNBC. You just can't look at CNN. You got to take a variety of different things out there, because you have 91% of the media controlled now by 6 companies. There's stuff that are being done to be shared with people off of companies basically putting a message out there, and all these news stations are repeating. They just did this last year on one of their stories. They saw all these different stations in the country doing the same story because that was being fed to them through the teleprompter. So as far as the court packing, it's not. I believe it's not really packing. I believe it is an expansion. It is an adjustment, and it's something that's long overdue.
All right, so I have 2 things, but I'll try to keep them short. So first off, the other thing that the Democrats are not good at is that we have to be ruthless about stuff sometimes. We can't just be nice and fight against people who are not playing by the rules. So this whole, what do they think if we put people on the Supreme Court? I don't know, maybe we shouldn't, is a bullshit attitude, and that needs to go. So if we want to talk about it for real, let's talk about it for real instead of this like pussyfooting around it, just stupid. Secondly, I think we need to have some serious conversations in this country about term limits, not just for Congress and different things like that, changing up the way that things are happening there, but having getting rid of the lifetime appointment would also make for more turnover. You could stagger it so that half of them and you could make it a long appointment. You could make it a 12-year term. You could make it a 15, 20-year term. But then if you stagger that, you're not having this race to get someone there for life. That's the stakes that we put on that is because you can't get rid of them. Once they're in there, it takes like an act of God to get them out. So I think we also, in addition to stop being afraid of talking about packing the courts, we also really need to think about whether or not having lifetime appointments for the Supreme Court is actually benefiting anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, you get to follow that.
Yeah, I don't know how I can follow that. That was awesome. The only point I really wanted to make was the idea is, as you all touched on, is the idea of like it's not packing the courts, it's expanding. Right. And that's the thing that Democrats need to get better at too, is branding. Because the idea that it should be expanding the court, or leveling the court or something like that, where it's like you're making it so that people understand it's just really trying to make it there's an equal share there. The other thing, it's the same thing with defund the police.
Defunding. Yep.
The sound of that. If you're going to try to do that and try to sell that to people who are conservative, they're going to hear that and be like, oh, well, then it's going to be the purge 24/7. No, it's not. What we're trying to do is you don't need that huge bloated budget. You can also send healthcare and mental health professionals to scenes for a lot of this stuff. I just think branding is just Democrats need to get better at that.
Well, they need to get better at communication because they suck. They suck at communication. They do a terrible job of getting their point across. They've got great ideas, but they can't conceptualize it into one easy thing that people can understand and run with. So and the GOP has gotten good at that. For all the flaws that they have, because they have no good ideas or none at all, they still package something in some big soundbite and they just regurgitate it over and over and over again. Whereas Democrats don't do that. They play defense so much over the things that they say instead of creating the language that they want. So they really have to get better at that.
Can I ask a question to JC though on that point? Just because, first I'll say when I first time I heard defund the police, I said that's not going to go over well because that makes no sense for the marketing. But like you were mentioning about Democrats learning how to market more, and again, this is where I get more to the independent thing. It's kind of like, the communication is an issue for them because if you go back, you look at some of the policies, whether some of them were actually under Obama, some that Biden had done, some under Clinton. Those actually previously were Republican ideas, but then the Democrats have trouble communicating stuff as well, and that's where they lose party. So it's kind of like, how do you fix that in there? I mean, is it just they don't like the messenger? Because sometimes the message doesn't change. It's just the person delivering. No matter what Bill was going to say or what Obama was going to say, it would get rejected. We said, well, 5 years ago, you said you wanted to do this. Now we're ready to do it. No, we didn't want to do it like that. It's the same exact thing you wanted to do. So and so maybe I don't know if there's an obstacle to maybe get over it. Maybe there is a communication or a marketing issue, but then there's also an issue of people accepting and hearing what you're actually saying too.
Yeah, Carla, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but it also for me, again, boils down to the fact that the Democrats have to have balls about this. Like they have to come out strong and stop pre-apologizing. Like you ever meet somebody who just apologizes before they say whatever they say? Like if you stop going in thinking you're going to get shot down, you might actually have a chance of communicating. I mean, look what happened with Obamacare and ACA. Like they let the Republicans call that Obamacare and reclaim that term and totally ruin it. And they never came back and said, no, that's the ACA. No, that's the ACA. No, they could have done that. And they didn't. Yeah. They let it go down. And now literally people don't know that Obamacare is the ACA. So like
ACA.
They are not taking enough. Like somebody said, defense versus offense. They need to come out unapologetically for stuff. That's the thing I hate.
They've played defense for too long because they have to. And they defend the shit that they say, or the shit that somebody else said about the thing that they want to sell, right?
Yeah.
The idea, the concept, and to get back to just a point you just made, and the Obamacare thing is perfect. Because it is the ACA. And if you would go to any fucking rally and you said, do you have Obamacare? No. Do you have ACA? Yeah. It's the same fucking thing.
Okay, so
you don't understand. See, so it goes, and then that is the GOP and the conservative message overrunning the actual thing that is out there. They've completely monopolized that idea of Obamacare is free healthcare.
Yeah,
not the ACA, but it is the ACA. So,
well, it's the same people that you have stand in line saying, keep the government out of my Social Security. What are you talking about? They run Social Security.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's the same ideology you're dealing with. So it's kind of like some people, like there's a little joke meme out there. Well, yeah, sometimes I agree 2 + 2 = 5 because that's the only way you're going to handle the situation.
Yeah. Right.
As a moderator, I've lost control. But
all right, Mike.
Bring it back, Kirsten Walker. Bring it back.
Stop apologizing.
So Mike, do you still have comments on packing the court? You wanted to talk a little bit about term limits in this aspect?
Well, first, I'm sorry. Let me start. I'm just totally kidding.
Well played.
Well played, sir.
I was thinking about term limits originally, and I think Carla really said what I was thinking about term limits. Like, you have a lifetime appointment, which is supposed to like take politics out of it, but politics is so ingrained into the process. And now we're like facing generational harm. So I would like to see term limits of like 20 years or 30 years, just so it's not a death sentence for, you know, an entire generation of folks. There's like some hope of change. So I was just curious if people thought about that. And then to bring it back onto where the conversation went originally in my brain, I was wondering if Democratic messaging problem might simply be because we are talking to a larger tent than an entire party that's talking to, you know, white supremacy and has an entire cable, has an entire state cable messaging machine to, you know, boost its messages nightly. But I think you've convinced me that even outside of that, the people pushing the message, you know, do yield to, let's call it Obamacare, like, fine, whatever, let's just get this thing passed. I think that is a part of our problem too.
And there's a combination of that, and we also, as Democrats, get smug about the fact, well, it's obviously right, so I don't really have to explain this to you because it should be common sense, because of course human rights, of course, you know, green environment, of course, and we don't do the work to get the people there. We just assume that if we say it, it'll happen. And it's like, no, that's not how that works either. You have to build up on these ideas, and you have to reinforce them, and you have to explain them, and you have to explain them over and over again, and not just be like, well, of course, you know, that arrogance is there. We think we're right, and we think that if people are logical and smart, they'll just see that we're right. And that's not how this works. That's not how media works. That's not how communication works. It's not.
It's the long game. It's the long game.
I was just going to say that it literally comes down to the Democrats as a group trying to take on too many different groups of people, like call them minorities, and it's hard to put all minorities under one umbrella, have them all agree to one particular type of ideology, and then they constantly are backpedaling. And Carla, to echo you, they don't have enough, as we would say from Long Island, chutzpah, right? They just don't know how to go in there and say something, and it's one of the reasons why, you know, I'm definitely much more, I guess, left of center left, you know, just for that very reason. So yeah, it really comes down to their long-term strategy, and we really should take a lesson from what the GOP did, because look at where the courts are right now. I mean, unfortunately, that game plan can be traced back to the early 70s. I mean, that's long-term thinking. And when you look at the history of politics, if you don't look at the long-term game plan and the way it pans out, just look at the way, if you go back to the early 1800s and the way the Federalists and the Democrat Republicans and the way they had to fight over having a two-party system, and they were all thinking about the long-term consequences that literally we're still feeling that ripple to this day. So yeah, Democrats really do need to think much more long-term and less short-term, because just as a queer guy, I'm not here for the short-term. I've got kids. I need to look at that long-term, and I want my politicians to represent that long-term thinking. So. Yeah,
I was going to say, you have to be careful, though, about the tent, just because, you know, a lot of times people say Democrats have the bigger tent. There's a lot of Republicans that have tent, too. They have the log cabin Republicans. They have the Latinos. They have the blacks. They have a lot of different people in their tent, too. It's just more focused. Like, I've got friends from all across the spectrum, and for some, it's kind of like, for what they're looking at for their individual life, for them and their family, what they need, there's different reasons why they would support Republican versus Democrat. And they can, you know, you compartmentalize everything. So it's kind of like, yeah, it might be, you know, 5% or 10% thing that Trump says here that might be a racist thing I don't agree with, but it's not something affecting me at home. And for what I need to do for my life, I have to take that. What I never like about that is that people don't take ownership for it. Like, if you want to back that, then take ownership for it as a total. It's kind of like when Obama was in office and I voted for Obama, there was stuff Obama didn't like, but I took that as a total as coming with Obama. People, you're going to vote for Trump. You can't be saying, well, I'm not for that. I'm for, it don't matter. You're for the whole thing if you voted for him. Just own up to it. Just own up to it and accept it. That's just what you're doing. And I hate that people don't do that. It's like, then you're just being fake. And it's kind of like, you know, I can't trust you. I don't know who you are if you can't even accept what you just did.
Boom. And let me get in here and show you guys some comments that have been coming in real quick. So, Chris Carlton, can everybody agree this will be the last election with fucking nearly 80-year-olds trying to run the country?
I'd like to, but unfortunately, with medicine nowadays, we'll probably have it forever with old people.
You know, that's funny, but at the same time, if the richest, oldest people can afford the best healthcare, then this is a self-perpetuating problem.
Yeah.
Right?
If terms are good enough for president, then all senators and representatives should get it too.
He felt better than he ever has when he got out of the hospital that cost, $2 million or whatever to treat him.
I mean, listen, I don't buy into conspiracy theories, but does everybody really believe he had it, though?
I believe he had it, and I believe there's a fake Melania, but we can talk about that after.
I don't know. I'm still
fake Melania.
I just have questions about it that just seem so incredibly unauthentic.
If you've ever met anybody who's been on that steroid, though, he was totally on that steroid.
I've been on it. It's awful.
That's what convinced me. He was an insane wackadoodle. All right, I'm sorry.
But that's the problem. He was that way before. So it was kind of like
this is like level 8. Yeah. It was...
So it's time to bring in another panelist. Her perspective is going to be interesting because we don't have a Black woman on the panel, and we hear about Black women as far as their influence in the Democratic vote, how they always vote right, how all those things. Interesting how Black women, and I don't know, I'm not going to speak for her. We'll talk about how Black women rallied behind Joe in the primaries. I mean, all these different aspects of Black women in voting. So without further ado, we're going to bring in our friend Solana.
Oh, shit.
What's going on, guys?
How are you?
I'm a little buzzed, but I'm good.
Right. Did I talk you up there?
So for those who don't know, Solana goes by Afro Beer Check, and that's how I met her through that channel of beer. But Solana, please tell us about yourself and where you're from, and is there a politician out there that grabs you in a good way?
I see. As far as keep it sweet and to the point, I drink beer and talk a lot of shit. Straight to the point. I mean, it is what it is. As far as politicians, I really don't have a favorite. I mean, I just know I can't stand Trump. Am I too excited about Biden and Harris? No, I'm really not. There's a lot of things as far as the Black vote. Like, I'm just not thrilled with either parties. But at this point, it's like you picking the lesser of two evils at this point. So, I mean, for me right now, it is what it is. I just don't want Trump back in office.
Who did you support in the primaries? Checking out.
Yeah, I don't want to know the answer. It was so bad. I was like, damn, maybe Kanye would even make a better president. I mean,
wow. If he stayed on his meds, maybe he would.
Right. I was like, man, he really bring his act up a little bit more. He'll be a viable candidate. It's been bad. Like, I just feel like we really don't have too many choices right now, Like, I don't know. I'm not thrilled with this ticket at all. Because I have to look at like what are we getting out of it? At the end of the day, I mean, there's still police brutality going on. Black people are still being oppressed. So it's like, what are we getting up out of it? And it's still the same old nonsense. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. All right, and so keeping that theme. We're going to jump into the defunding the police, Black Lives Matter, civil unrest. I believe that the turnout is directly involved in the civil unrest. That's where I'm at. Because people came out in crazy numbers and crazy places. Bozeman, Montana, really? Boise, Idaho, Spokane, Washington, really? No, I mean, it was 50 states. Cheyenne, Wyoming. Come on. Like,
wait, are we talking about Black Lives Matter right now? Are we talking about voting?
I'm segueing into that, meaning like for me, the civil unrest, seeing respectfully, all these white people out there. Again, Cheyenne, Wyoming, Boise, Idaho, Bozeman, Montana. Not many of us out there, ABC. So,
but then it's a matter
they were
who they
out there
vote for.
causing problems night after night. Like it wasn't just a oh, we're out here one day. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm saying when we see all these people out there voting fast, early, with a big push, and I'm
Well, ain't
again,
none of
this
it
isn't
fast.
just Chicago, this isn't just New York. This is across the board. We could show that one little thing where they show all this across the board. People are sparked. Why are they sparked? My opinion is the civil unrest. And the civil unrest ultimately goes back to Donald J. Trump because again, we didn't have this civil unrest. In my lifetime, in our lifetime. So it's hard to not pin a lot of this on him. In my opinion. And we can all talk about that, but it's hard to not. If again with the first black president, people were angry, but we didn't have this kind of thing. And yes, people were fed up, and we had the pandemic, so people were able to stop and be like, "All right, man, people, wow, this is really going on." But the pandemic and Trump, man, I'm telling you, is that fuel.
I'm gonna give you my honest opinion on that, and it probably pissed somebody off, but I don't care, right?
Oh, I want
right.
This is why we have this part right here.
George Floyd and let me say this: Black Lives Matter started off as a wonderful movement to put our voices out there. But since George Floyd, I've seen that it's become a social media trend. It's become a fashion trend. I've seen more Black Lives Matter shirts and cups and all that than I actually have seen action. And we have seen a lot of people hit the streets for Black Lives Matter, but in the same token, I've seen a lot of destruction in the name of Black Lives Matter that had nothing to do with Black people. It was not about us. Our voices, our movement was infiltrated to make it seem like it was about us. It's not about us, because at the end of the day, guess what? It's still going on. Breonna Taylor's killers are still walking free. They're shooting in Waukegan. A young lady was just shot by the police in Waukegan, within the last week. It's still going on. It's become a social media trend. And the reason why we didn't see this in our younger days was because of social media. Social media has pushed this to the forefront. So now we're sitting here waiting until the next one. Or until the next one and the next one. So I'm at the point where is the actual action going to happen? Like, we had an opportunity to bring Breonna killers to the forefront. And what happened? They're going to walk free. What about George Floyd killers? They're going to walk free too. So now I'm just at the point where I'm disappointed, I'm hurt, I'm angry, because my Blackness is just a social media trend. That's why I'm frustrated.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, here's. Oh.
Go ahead.
Here's my take on it, right? So, a lot of times things get conflated together, right? So there's Black Lives Matter when it came out from individuals that started the program. That was more the message in response to the police violence that had been done and the things that were taking place. And then you had the march and all kind of stuff, which was actually encouraging because you had the different groups coming together. And I think I mentioned this when me and ABC did the podcast before. It's 2040, 2041. They're looking at white people becoming a minority in this country. I think that plays a big part into it. There's a lot of fear there. And I think we've had more people marching now together that were Black and white and Asian or whatever different groups, because you do have more intermingling that took place of people actually coming together and doing that. So now more people are saying, well, I've got a person like that in my family than we've had in previous years. So that's why you're seeing a lot of that out there. But there was an infiltration that was done at a certain point. If you look at the arrests that are taking place from a lot of these marches you're finding now, they're finding a lot of the far right people are the ones that were actually committing this, that was spraying Black Lives Matters on stuff. They just arrested one of the Boogaloo boys in one of the states for what he had actually done, shooting it up. So there's an infiltration and a taking over of that. There is a little bit of a social media marketing aspect. Like, some people say, I'm supporting the group, but where's that money going to? Like, there's a lot of t-shirts or a lot of coffee mugs, a lot of bumper stickers, but yet you're not seeing it being put into communities that actually, need that. It's kind of like we all like, I think we're all here pretty much beer drinkers, I believe. So we had the Black is Beautiful movement, which I was heading into. Good call there. Where are the breweries that are putting stuff? Like a lot of breweries are putting 100% proceeds. They'll tell you we're putting it into the Chicago NAACP, or we're putting it into the Boston, Black Lives Matter movement, or whatever. They're telling you different groups where it's actually going and stuff like that. But I don't know if all of them were kind of doing it. Some of them were kind of getting into it. I felt like, someone had asked me when I had done some reviews, and they said, well, it's kind of cool. You have like 1,000 breweries that have signed on for this. And I'm like, yeah, kind of. We have 7,500 in the US. The 1,000 is coming from around the world. So we have people over in England that are putting into it too. So when you think about all the breweries in the world, it's really kind of a drop in the pan of the ones that actually did get involved. And I feel on the back end, some got involved because they were going to say, I don't want to be left out. I don't want them thinking I'm against it. So we'll go ahead and do something over here as well. So it's kind of an interesting type thing, but there is some type of marketing in place that are also taking some things away, I think, from the actual movement itself. But the movement, I feel, is still a pure movement. It's just they got to get the message back,
Well, we're back to messaging. Jeffrey, you have something to say?
The only thing I think, I don't have too much to add, just with, clearly I'm white, so I'm just trying to listen and hear what everything is saying. And what I'd love to just echo ABC is that there's a podcast I listen to, and your voice is very similar to their perspective, called Black Radical Queer. I don't know if you've ever heard of that podcast or yes, would be interested in hearing somebody who's very similar with the way that you speak. And the way you speak just really connected to me. And what it reminded me of, and I don't want to bring in, let's say pop music or with regards to, Broadway, but Hamilton, there's a line that I think it's Washington that speaks it with regards to the revolution, that we're a powder keg, about ready to explode. And I think it would be foolish for any of us to think that what's going on right now is really just, Trump's fault. It really isn't Trump's fault. I think it's more, this is just where we are after how many decades. And I think it's just more of the transformation of oppression of people of color. And you can really trace it. You can trace it for throughout our 400-year history. Every single time we think we've reached a new mantle in civil rights, unfortunately, oppression just rears its head in a different color. So that oppression that people feel, I can only imagine is just, it is not only generational, but it is always in their face. So this isn't, unfortunately, something that was, Trump's fault, because I know that when I started digging deep with respect to my journey in being anti-racist and the work that I've done, it was during the beginning of the Obama administration when I really started diving deep and reading, and the same feelings are now. And even 10 years prior to some of the readings and people that I listened to. So this is really just a culmination. It's not a shock. Yeah. I mean, there's no change. What do we expect?
Trump has always been the result. He wasn't an issue. Trump's the result of stuff. And even to the part you're talking about, I know we may touch on that later, but you got to talk about some of the stuff even Joe Biden has done in the past and has said as well.
Absolutely.
Like I said, because he's hit on stuff too. And
absolutely.
Some people say, well, he's not racist. Well, he's racist some of the thinking that he had in the past. He didn't go out like Trump and, mark the applications for tennis, whether they're C for colored or not, like Trump did, where he got sued and lost that back in the 70s. But he's made comments that were very racist, and you got to go into the crime bill. That's why a lot of people aren't on board with that. And even talking Kamala, I know that I think it's Jay. Who was it that said they were friends with one of the friends? It was Mike, actually. I've got friends in California that are not fans of Kamala because of what she did as a DA out there. And that's an issue for them. So there's a whole lot of perspectives that goes. Like I said, you go back over a period of time, neither party has really been as great, when you look at it. And when you look at the original Foreman, when they first came out with the constitutional stuff, you had more than one party that would run for. I mean, back then, you'd have 5 or 6 parties that run for office, and whoever got the top 2 votes were your president and vice president. We whittled it down through the years to just 2 parties really being the strength of it, versus how they actually saw it in the beginning.
I'm going to put it out there.
Ooh, Jeff first.
Nope, ABC.
No, Jeff, go ahead. You know, put out there.
If anybody is interested, speaking of, you just talked about like the Continental Congress and the Electoral College, and sort of how the votes used to work, even down to the 1800s, how it changed in 1800 and then changed again later on, just post Civil War. There's a phenomenal podcast that NPR puts on called Throughline. And just recently, they had a 3-part series or 3-part special regarding the electoral process, the election process. And it is incredibly racist, the entire history of the election process. Mm-hmm. And I think if anybody on this panel wants to consider themselves left or do any kind of work, it's super important to really understand that the changes in our election process are deeply rooted in the South's racist history, and that is still a system that we are literally complicit in to this day. And that it just needs to change. And it's a really great series. It's a really great 3-part series anyway.
I'm sorry. No, I was going to say not just the South, because the South is the slavery part, but you also had the North that were doing stuff with the Native Americans and stuff too, and things like that. So yeah, I mean, people don't realize, like, when they fought the Civil War, Grant had slaves too. Yes, there was slavery in the North as well. So, and Lincoln himself said if he could keep slavery, keep the Union together, he would do that as well. So again, there's a lot of stuff out there that people don't realize.
ABC.
I'm going to say, you cannot put it all on Trump. I mean, but however, Trump has made it okay to be outright.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to say, like, my grandfather was a politician here in Chicago. And so I had kind of seen both sides of it. One of the ways you get Black people to vote and keep them in line is you hit the churches, you get the pastors. Once you hit the pastors is how you get the black vote. And they know that. And they've always used religion to keep us in line, knowing that we're not getting anything out of it. That's why I say religion is the biggest form of slavery there is, because that's what it was used to keep us in line. So when you look at the election, that's why I said I can't really side with Biden because of his past actions. I can't really side with Kamala, even as a Black woman, because of her voting record when she was DA. I mean, her arrest record when she was DA. Then of course I can't side with Trump, because at the end of the day, politics is not the Black people's best friend. We've never gotten anything out of it. They've only given us just enough to make it feel like we're getting something. Mm-hmm. I mean, with President Obama, yes, we have the first Black president in the world. We never thought we were ever going to see that. But look what happened. Had President Obama done a fraction of what Trump has done, he would have been impeached the first 10 days of being in the White House. So that's the difference between the Black and the white. So this is why I can't get excited about, and I'm going to be honest with you, I deeply soul search, like, why am I voting? Why are Black people voting? What are we getting out of it if we vote? Because at the end of the day, our children still have crappy schools to go to. We're still begging to get just ahead, just a little bit. Our health care when it comes to Black women is shitty. So what are we getting out of it? What is the purpose of us voting?
We get to get a racist out. That's what we get.
Yeah, but let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Is it better?
We didn't vote for him the last time, and he still got into the office.
Is it better to know the racist that's in or the one that's hidden?
Huh?
Is it better to know the racist that's in?
I'm just an open racist versus a closeted one. I've always said
like if you went to the South and they were racist, you knew they were racist, so you knew where you stood. The ones that were hiding in the closet were kind of like you didn't, they would sneak up on you. So is it better to know the one in the open versus the one that might not be out there? Just a question. True. Just a question.
I will say one thing. I will say one thing about the thing the thing you know versus the thing you don't know. The day of the election 4 years ago when Trump got elected, I sat there with a group of friends. We were all at a bar. Everybody's like, it's fine. It's just your guy didn't win. Like, whatever. It'll be okay. And I was like, you have no idea how much this is going to change everything because the man doesn't abide by any norms. So the norms that this stupid white government set up to just kind of have things be polite, and you don't do that, and you don't do this. They're not laws, they're norms. So he doesn't give a shit about any of that, and he just crashed through every guardrail that has ever existed. And people didn't believe me that it was going to fundamentally fuck our entire our entire process of government. The thing about guardrails is the metaphor that I've heard used by other people is basically like, once you've crashed the tractor trailer through the guardrail, it's less safe for everybody that comes behind, right? Like, because the next time you skid a little bit, you're going over the side. The guardrail isn't going to stop you. So
because the guardrail isn't there.
Right. And combined with the fact that he lost the popular vote, and combined with the fact that he was in denial that he lost the popular vote, and he thinks that he's like the most popular thing since God, it's so infuriating to sit here and have people go, oh, well, it's just, your guy didn't win. It's just, oh, you're going to have a Democrat now. That's fine. Blah, blah. Like, I can't stand that kind of like reduction because yes, he's the inevitable outcome of this fucked up racist system that puts the white guy at the front of the line. But he has done so much more damage than I thought he could. And it's gonna really, really take some time to even come close to undoing some of that. And that's what scares me. I don't even care who's next, unless they're gonna spend the whole 4 years trying to put band-aids on what he broke. It's screwed up.
Yeah. You know what the worst thing about Trump isn't Trump.
At this point, we are way beyond. It's Band-Aid. It's going to be over a decade before we can really get back on track. Because what he's done, not only the racial tension and the financials of what is beyond. It's going to be about a grace. It's going to be a miracle to come here for us to even get back on track. Nearly what we used to be at. It's not going to happen. No time.
Right. Well, he got rid of all of the glue that was kind of trying to hold us towards a norm, and it's gone. It's gone.
I think the funny thing about Trump, it wasn't really as much about Trump. It was the people you didn't know that you knew that supported Trump. The more you found out about those people that you were around or you socialized with or were family members. And some of these interesting Thanksgiving dinners this November, I'm going to say right now, people do get together. But it's those people that you didn't know that were pulling for him along those lines is what really woke up society.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if we're gonna we'll get back to BLM, but Rod brought me to a place where I really want to go, and it's how has politics changed since we were kids and since we were growing up. And this is one aspect. Am I wrong, Rod? That literally politics goes on the kitchen table now. It's literally on the Thanksgiving table. It was before with Crazy Uncle, and there might be a little bit, but after
here's the thing that always bothered me when I was a kid. Like, people would say, you never talk about politics and religion. And I would say, why don't you ever talk about politics and religion? Because it'll start like, well, how do you move forward if you never talk about it? You keep people boxed in the corner. And social media has kind of brought that out to the forefront where people now talk about it and they see the differences. And now things have to be expressed. So the difference we have now is that more people have to talk about it and have these conversations. And the goal is to move it to the better. The problem is you're challenging ideologies, and some people can't handle those conversations. That they can't do that. I mean, just now, today or yesterday, I don't know if you guys saw it down in Texas. Some Trump people driving tried to run Biden's bus, one of Biden's buses off the road, and ended up having a crash with one of the staffers in the car. We've never really been to that kind of point since back maybe in the 60s where we had the civil rights type stuff. But after that, you're going back to where you're basically, people have already been saying it for years, we're in the cold civil war, but you're getting to the point where it's like, if you don't have a gun, you might want to think about getting one just because for your own protection, because of things that are out there right now. One of the biggest demographics growing is Black ownership of guns because the safety level is rising for people.
Yes.
So it's less safe now, is what you're saying.
It's less safe now for a lot, because you never know who you're going to run into. You're getting people that want to kill you over the mask. And you're going to their store and they say wear a mask.
Rod, why? And we'll get to whoever's next. BC, and I see Carla jumping.
I've been jumping too much. You don't need to talk.
Rod, why though? Rod, quickly, why?
For what? The mask and everything, or why people are getting this?
No, why do I have to buy a gun now and I didn't during the Gore Bush years?
Because you don't know who that person is anymore. That may be the one that jumps off at you. You just don't know that. The littlest things right now. You have people, go past like the bird watcher incident in New York. Go to some of these other areas. There was just a Black couple renting Airbnb, and a white couple just walked up in their house where they were renting, asking about, like, what if they would have came in there with some guns or something? You just don't know what's going to happen. So if you feel like you can't handle yourself with what you have around and you're thinking about a gun, you might want to go ahead and do that, because guess what? If things do get crazy, like some people think they may, I don't know if we're going to get to that point, but guess what? They're going to stop selling guns to certain people if you don't agree, especially with their philosophy. So then you're trying to find a gun and you might not be able to get one.
Carla, and then ABC.
Okay, the only thing I want to say is that
Jay.
one of the reasons
And then
that
Jay.
it is becoming more violent and that things are happening is because it's being encouraged. We were talking earlier about it's okay now to be openly racist. It's okay now to be openly violent. We're literally having leaders praise these idiots for going and shooting people, for going and doing justices and the Proud Boys and the go watch the polls and liberate Michigan. Like, it's being encouraged by our leadership. Of course, this isn't me arguing about whether or not George W. Bush is going to support some climate change accord. That's the maddest I ever got, back when I was in college, right? As I was an environmentalist and I'm like, how dare you ruin our environment and put Exxon in your whatever. That wasn't like George W. Bush wasn't like, hey, you know what's great? That guy who, shot a couple of random people at the protest, he's a good dude. Like, no. That never happened. We are in a different level, and it's another level. It's
HG.
And talking about the guns, just so you know, MLK kept a couple around.
There you go.
People like to throw MLK out there. He had guns.
How that story ended, clearly he should have had them. But go on.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a handgun versus a sniper is not.
Well, you got security. I mean, security's supposed to help out. I mean,
so the difference between now and then, in part, has to do with media, right? Because media was not as all-consuming in our lives back then as it is now. And I do have another example, or have an example with regard to that in some of the other conversation, but our parents are from a generation where they didn't share it. So it takes time over generations to wean yourself from past habits that have been detrimental, and being silent about your politics and your religion can be detrimental to the long-term stability and evolution of our society. Because if you don't have those conversations, the hard conversations, you can't progress forward. So thinking of earlier when ABC was talking about BLM being a social media thing, and it's a whatever, it made me think of back in 91, Rodney King. Rodney King was like a flashpoint at that time, because there was no social media. Somebody just happened to have a video camera and caught cops beating a guy. Now it's kind of commonplace to have a phone out and you can catch somebody doing something just about anywhere, anytime. Back then, that didn't happen. And so they were caught on tape doing it, but then the system was already rigged for those guys to get off from it. And so that little moment didn't spark enough change, and things kept going. And then the technology kept building, and now we've got it everywhere. And now we live in a society of social media. So it is easy to take BLM and turn it into just a social media thing and dilute the message very quickly. As long as there are people that are working hard to actually do the work and keep it going for the right reasons, you can still keep BLM a very important message. But you have to get over the social media aspect that is so consumed everybody's lives, and the people's attention span is so short now that once the craziness dies down, media shifts to the next thing. So now it's all about election and dealing with the election, and BLM is now on the side, and Antifa and all that crap is on the side because it's the election, and oh my God, are we going to get this crazy person back in power again? And so anyway.
Well, I was going to say, going back to I don't want to take all the airtime, so everybody's like, tell me to shut up when I'm talking too much. But
shut up, Rod. Rod.
Going back to a point with Shalonda, and she'll probably agree with me here too on some of the stuff. It's the history of the country. So, you brought up the Rodney King thing. It's kind of like when I saw Rodney King on there, it wasn't like that wasn't anything unknown. I mean, that's why, before that happened, years before that, you had an NWA doing "fuck the police." That's, we grew up in the 60s. My cousin, Shalonda mentioned her grandfather. My cousin was Vernon Johns. He actually was the mentor to Martin Luther King. If you ever see the Vernon Johns story, which is on YouTube as well, James Earl Jones plays him in the movie. His last sermon hit on a lot of the stuff that can still be said today about what is taking place. And it's like, for us, it's just like, for me, like I told my wife the other day, it's like, all I gotta know is who's in charge, and I know what I can do, because they got the different rules. It's like we as a Black person in America, we adjust. We're the best adjusting, I think, group in America when things happen, when things get people going crazy over the COVID mask, running out of toilet paper. Black people they knew what they needed to do. We were used to adjusting. We were used to being on the shoestring budget if we needed to be. So we knew how to make the moves that get stuff done and make sure we're in the right spot. So it's kind of like our lifestyle is about adjusting to what's being thrown our way. It's like, I've been asked over times, like I have a lot of friends that are military. I have some friends that ask if I'm military. I said, no, I was actually in high school recruited by the Naval Academy and also going to Air Force Academy because I was an athlete and I was pretty smart back then. But I'm like, why would I serve for a country that never serves for us? If you know the history of soldiers, what they deal with, coming back from World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, couldn't even get respect when they got back. It's like, why would I want to serve for a country like that? It was kind of like, that's why Muhammad Ali was such an early hero for me when he stood out back then talking about going to Vietnam. It's like it made all perfect sense. So, we do these things. And one of the other things I was going to say is I get tired of hearing like it's up to like the Black women or it's up to the Black community. Something. Why do we have to have the weight of the vote on us? Why should it be on us? We were brought here without even a decision being made. So why should it fall to us? Like, and then they say something didn't work. Well, we didn't have enough Black voters out here voting. Were there not enough suburban? Maybe you should have messaged the suburban voters that wanted to maybe switch the message a little bit.
Voted for Trump. That's
yes. Yeah, so I mean, again, we go back to message and make a message why they should actually have that interest. It's like,
why does the minority have to carry the weight of the damn country on their shoulders? Let's talk about that. Why does the minority have to do that?
It's creating scapegoats.
Well, I told my wife, there's let the Latinos carry the weight for a while. Why is it gotta be us all the time?
I'm gonna tell you, as far as the difference between politics then and now, like I said, my grandfather was heavy into politics. So I remember getting dressed up in my cute little dresses and my pound out the shoes and going politicking with him. Like I have pictures now that I didn't know when I was younger of me with Muhammad Ali. When I was 3 and 4, I didn't know who Muhammad Ali was. Big, huge Harold Washington and all that. So now it's like the difference now is our youth are more socially conscious now than they were when we were coming up. And I love that. I love the fact that my 15-year-old and my 20-year-old can now have conversations about what's going on because they know it's affecting them. We didn't have that back in the day. Kids, when we didn't. Presidential election, it just we may have had a mock election in high school, and other than that, it went over our head. Right. These kids are now out here in the streets, and they're fighting for what they know is right for them, and that's the part that I'm loving about it. But to touch upon what Rajay just said, why does the burden fall on Black people, especially Black women? I'm tired of feeling like I have to educate other people about what I'm going through. And what pisses me off the most is when I get counterparts telling me how I should feel about a situation. Oh, it's not racist. How the hell you want to tell me it's not racist when you're not going through it? You know what I'm saying?
Don't ever tell anybody not in your group it's not racism if you don't know what they experience. Yeah.
If you follow me on my Twitter, there's days I'll just go in and don't care. I don't care who follows me, who unfollows me, but it's exhausting trying to constantly explain your position as a Black person in America because the way falls on you. Yes, Black women, we're the highest number of single mothers. What can we do? I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's just, yes, we carry the burden. Yes, unemployment is high. But however, it seems like whenever something goes wrong, it's the Black woman's fault. We carry that burden. And it's hard. And it's exhausting. And guess what? We're trying to do the best we can. If Trump loses this election, guess what they're going to say? Black women didn't vote. We are the to blame for everything, and you know what? I am so sick and tired of it.
It gets old. It gets old, and it's just one of those things. Like, stop putting that weight out there. You know, like it's for us to have to deal with that. It's, you know, like I said, we weren't. You know, it's kind of funny because there was a piece I shared on my page one time, and it talked about documents that were written from back in the day when the country was formed, and it was actually set out to keep poor whites away from the slaves and away from the Native Americans because they had a fear of them all uniting together and then rising up together. And most people still fall into that trap. It's just like this whole thing, and it's like that's why I hate when people say the system is broken. Like, no. The system is doing what it was designed to do.
Yes,
people
it is.
are just waking up to the system, and now you got to
doing what it meant to do.
Yeah, I mean, even Jefferson. Like I always have trouble with the founders, obviously with the slavery type thing, but even Jefferson had wanted to put more stuff in it to make the Constitution more workable, that people can make changes, and it was the other signers of it that didn't want him to do that.
Correct.
So he was trying to make it more to adapt over time. So again, this is what we were built on. This is what everything was founded on. It's like last month was Christopher Columbus. Like, why do you still have Columbus Day in some states? No idea.
Come on,
you know
really?
The history.
Yeah.
You know what he did.
Really?
Yeah.
Maine doesn't.
Yay, Maine.
Jay, you've been waiting.
Although I grew up in
Jay.
Syracuse, New York, and they got rid of Columbus Circle and the damn statue that's been there since I was a little kid. So I am down. Sorry.
All right, Jay, you got something to add there, Mr. Quiet?
Yeah, the only thing I say about that is if you take statues down, I feel like
Hold on, Ron.
you're putting away a part of American history. I feel like there should be a plaque to go there to say how bad it was. With
no, there should be we fuck this guy.
But everybody goes to the museum. That's the only thing.
Well, Jay.
Take that shit down. I'm all for it.
They had enough time.
No,
Right,
the reason why you take it down is because of the fact that what they do is they breeze over the Black history because they
That's
don't
what I'm saying. You got to put the real aspect to it.
Take that shit down and let's acknowledge what actually happened. Okay, that's all.
I don't even know why we still give Rose scholarships if you know Cecil Rose. I'm just saying.
Whoa.
Jay.
I was a Rose scholar.
I ceded my time, Mr. Moderator.
Reclaiming my time.
No, so it's very difficult to go after all these other people and talk about my crazy white uncle. But since somebody mentioned the crazy uncle status earlier in politics then versus now, what's funny is I've seen a reversal in my family. So like I remember, I'm only 34, but I remember going into the booth with my parents when Clinton was running, and then pulling down the giant metal lever and then being like, yeah, I voted for Clinton, blah, blah, blah. And so I was in high school when September 11th happened, and I immediately enlisted. I never planned on doing that. And of course, because I was in the military, I followed the whole mindset of, hey, you're conservative, vote for Bush. And along the way, I've realigned. I like to, or Doug likes to pick on me because I identify as a libertarian Democrat. But so where I'm going with it, is we've mentioned that while Trump may not be the totality of the problem, he has brought out the people who were hiding it, and I think it was Rod who mentioned earlier, like if you were in the South, you knew who was racist. So I was born in Ohio. We moved down to Florida. In my Floridian family, we did have some of the quote unquote redneck people there who loved NASCAR and drank their shitty beer. And but you all hung out on Thanksgiving and you didn't talk to politics. Now, fast forward to this year, and I'm sharing. I like to say that I'm pretty centrist in the news that I share. Like, Doug, maybe you can attest for me, you as well, Greg. Like, I post from all news sources, like, really, I just want to foster discussion. And there was a point recently where every thread that I posted, my uncle popped in, and at one point he's like, "You're a fucking commie traitor. You're not a real veteran." And I'm like, "Wait, I'm an honorably discharged non-combat veteran. You never served, and either did Trump. Like, why are you attacking me on this? Like, let's have a conversation." And it's really emboldened those people. I would have never expected that from him. Again, this is a guy who would fix my car for free when I was growing up. This is a guy who would have us over for Thanksgiving or Christmas. You know, we'd watch football games. And then now that we're at this situation, like, there is no middle ground. It is, if you are looking at anybody other than Trump and the GOP, you are socialist, you are a traitor. It does not matter if you served your country, you know? And it's really disheartening. And they will go after every facet of you. So, like, one of the things I absolutely love is my niece is a young Black woman, and like, she likes to joke around with the rest of the family. She's like, "Uncle Jay is so woke. I love that you're woke." And I'm like, I was like, "Whoa, slow down. You know, I'm trying to be an ally, but I'm not as woke as some people out there." And again, I want to avoid, again, making it a trend or a fashion statement. But like, that's one thing. Like, my uncle and my brother popped in, and they're like, "No, there's no racism there. We're all equal." And I'm like, you are looking in the eyes of a Black female and telling her that you understand what she's trying to tell you she lives on a daily basis, but you have no idea. You are a white redneck male in Florida. Like, you are upset that Bubba Wallace is in NASCAR now. And like, I know that's a lot to take in, but like, that's the state of politics to me. Like, we went from like a quiet, like, okay, yeah, I voted for Clinton. Okay, I voted for Bush. Woo, America. And now it's just, there is no middle ground. There's no conversation like we're having tonight.
Yeah. I got a question. Sorry, go ahead, Carl.
The quickest comment ever is that I read somebody, and of course it was a tweet because I'm on Twitter constantly, but is that, remember when I think we're kind of all, give or take, of similar generations. When we were growing up, my parents, like my generation's parents, told me, "Don't watch too much TV, it'll rot your brain." It's rotted the boomer generation's brain to watch Fox News. The people that I respected in my life of the boomer generation have literally lost their minds, and I don't know how to fix it. Like, these were intelligent people. They weren't stupid. They weren't uneducated. They weren't gullible. It's brainwashing, and I've lost them to Fox News.
Jeff. But let's be fair for a moment, because it's not just the boomers that listen to Fox, because I know that there are also boomers that listen to CNN and MSNBC constantly. And if we're gonna call them out on both sides, I'm gonna call out my mom for a moment, and God bless if she watches this.
You're not trying to get Thanksgiving this year, huh?
No, well, she and I, she's definitely gotten a lot more progressive with the way that she looks at things. That's for sure, especially as we've grown together. But I'm in a home where it's always on. CNN is always on. And when I hear it, and when I hear the words that they purposefully choose, just like on Fox, it is absolutely with precision. It is as bad. And that's why, I don't remember who it was. Forgive me for not paying attention to everybody who said everything. But whoever said earlier, it's important to consume media from multiple different sources. That includes left, right, center. It includes international, reading things from there, because that's the only way I'm truly able to, form the opinions. And I think that one of the issues between politics then versus now is that back then we were streamed with only one source. CNN back then was pretty neutral. That's what we had growing up in the 80s. There were maybe one or two other channels that were going. The 90s hit, it got a little bit more expansive. And then the 2000s hit, social media hit, and then it became whoof. The cadence of the news cycle just kept picking up and picking up and picking up, and then you wind up finding your favorites. I only listen to this one because I like his view. Anyway, I'm done with that. So
not just expansive, but controlled too.
And controlled for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about Fox. I remember when Fox came out and they made their point of, we are fair and balanced. So when your brain listens to the message that's fed to you in the beginning, right? And if you fall into the message at the beginning, you're going to that's the thread. That's where it starts, right? So I remember when they would like show the debates, they show the debate and then they turn everything off. They wouldn't have commentators, they wouldn't have anything else. I was like, okay, that's actually refreshing. Nobody's there to talk at me and tell me what I just heard and tell me what's right and what's wrong. I got to think for myself, but that changed very quickly. And so that gets back to at the beginning of our conversation, the long game. Fox News has played the long game from the very beginning. They sowed the seed, and people that have started to watch it from its inception, they have a narrative that has been built over decades that has been building and building and building to where we are now, where everybody's losing their minds from watching Fox News, and granted CNN and MSNBC and any other news source, if you are sunk down in that one particular news feed for your information, right? So conservative media has been doing this for a while. It has not been like in the last 4 years where they've been doing this thing. They've just been more emboldened because now they have somebody who's a parrot of what they say, and the message that they've been doing the long game of, right? Yeah. So,
well, let's not forget, it also changed because of money.
Sure.
So when you had that taken over, and most people don't realize. So CNN, you have CNN News, and you have CNN Opinion. You have Fox News, you have Fox Opinion. They're different segments. If you look them up, they're different segments. Fox will only run their news really from like 7 to 8. CNN has their news at a certain time. Everything else on those channels are opinion shows. So people get skirted into a lot of the different things because of opinion being added in different areas that they're not aware of, that they conflate in the news as well. It's not like the days when I grew up as a little kid and Walter Cronkite was on the news. When Walter Cronkite gave you the news, that was it. He gave you when Tom Brokaw later on gave you the news, that was it. They hit on a lot of that keys that they weren't putting their own judgment on stuff. And there's a lot of these stations where people put their own judgment into things.
Carla?
No, Doug.
Sorry. Carla wants to directly respond to what Rod said, and I want to hear it because otherwise.
Yeah, that's fine. Carla, you go. I'll go after you.
For sure. Thank you. We got to, yeah.
I just want to caution against oversimplifying and rose-colored glassing the past, because Cronkite and Edward R. Murrow and all those guys, they did provide commentary about what was going on in the Nixon administration, et cetera. Like, they were not as objective as one would think. And secondly, that CNN was a warmongering station, even if it didn't say so, with the Operation Desert Storm. So they were live streaming a war and promoting Islamophobia a long time ago, just about Iraq and everything else going on. So I just want to that was a quick, that's why I made a face. And I just want to
it's all different perception. Were they warmongering or were they telling the story because they had people behind the lines?
No, they were 24 hours broadcasting the war to justify the war to continue.
Well, no, yeah. I mean, they were broadcasting. I'll give them that. I mean, I was a journalism major and we studied that stuff like in the night. And there's different. It's kind of like we talked about 9/11 earlier. Like someone that did the bad act to somebody else, they were a hero. It's like, well, how do you know what side people are always in? But by that time with CNN for sure, they were definitely under that influence versus when Cronkite told Nixon, you need to Vietnam done. And that's when Nixon knew he'd lost because Cronkite told him he's not going to win that war.
All right. I want 1 point before we go to the next topic, please. One. Very quick.
Go, Doug, go.
There is no equivalent to Fox News on the left. There is not.
Correct.
Right.
Now, there's left-leaning stations, your MSNBCs, your CNBCs. Yes, they lean that way. But there is not a fucking propaganda network like fucking Fox News. That thing is just all Trump all the time. And listen, you have to, as Rod said, you do have to listen to some of that so you understand where they're coming from. Mm-hmm. But that's a fucking right now. They were always right. That, but right now, that is a it's not state sponsored because they're not funded by the state, but it is propaganda network for the right. That's what it is.
Yeah, for the most part, yes. But even Trump has attacked them because they have had people.
Yeah, because they didn't kiss his ass.
Well, I mean,
because
they've been some stories that have been pointed out as well that Trump lied, and there's people on there that said that Trump lied. No, it doesn't work that way. And it's kind of like the CNN, the interview last week or the week before with Nancy Pelosi and Wolf, how she attacked Wolf. Well, Wolf's just doing his job. That didn't show as good from the left either.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying that there's not this both sidesism stuff. That drives me fucking nuts.
Right.
That drives me fucking nuts.
And I think going back to what Carla mentioned way earlier in the show about the Democrats getting their balls back or growing them in the first place, it applies to this as well. I mean, if you remember when Obama was in office, he was going on Fox, he was going on O'Reilly, and he was having an open dialogue. Versus, while Trump's been in office, you're not seeing a lot of that. You're seeing a lot of the talking heads from the Democrat side staying on CNN. And I think one of the most positive things we've seen lately with that is Mayor Pete, Buttigieg has been just going to Fox and just laying into them. I think we need more of that. When you can only reach the people who are watching Fox by going on Fox, you need to stop basically shaking in your pants about going and having those discussions.
So that's the one fault I will say of Warren is that she said, I'm not going on Fox. I'm not going to talk to them. So that's the one fault I would have with Warren is that you stop talking to them because of the broader thing, right? But I give a lot of kudos to Pete for saying, no, this isn't how it works. You don't get to dilute my message. Here is the message. And a live audience is not going to be able to censor out what they hear because Pete is going to say it.
All right.
Anyway,
so I want to get to another hot topic of the election, is what people call defunding the police, and it's clearly one that Donald Trump is running on, and it kind of feels like Joe is running away from it. I'm not sure. We talk about that, but I kind of want to know, ABC, where you stand. Whereas Black, obviously you don't speak for every Black female, obviously, but your perspective on this is something that no one else in the panel could give us. So, I'll jump back in on this later, but I want ABC to jump off first, please.
All right, when it comes to defund the police, I mean, it's easy to say, basically, in my NWA voice, to fuck the police. Let's look realistically. What does defunding the police really look like? Okay, what they want people to disband or what? Because it's not going to happen. I think for me, the more realistically approach is to take police. I can't speak for any other city or state, but here in Chicago, the city of Chicago has heavy police in our schools. I'm not liking that. Why are we spending millions of dollars to incorporate CPD in their schools? Let's take them out of the schools. You're treating kids like criminals from the start. It's like for us, for a young Black youth, it's from pipeline to prison. It's like from birth to prison. It's like there's no gray area for us. So let's take the police out of schools. Let's defund that. And unfortunately, the CPD and the CPS of Chicago Public Schools here, they are continuing that contract. I'm not happy with that. For me, realistically, I would say police should patrol where their communities. It's hard to have when you have, I know you guys may not be familiar with the Chicagoland area, but when you have Oak Forest, which is a south suburb of Chicago, coming in to police Inglewood and the west side of Chicago, what do you think is going to happen? When you have a police officer who lives in a predominantly white area come in to patrol a predominantly Black area, what do you think is going to happen? There used to be a time where you patrol where you police. For some reason, we got away from that. For some reason, it used to be where you had to live where you worked. We need to get back to that. Am I going to say completely ban the police? No, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say that I don't like how Chicago police, no, I'm sorry, not Chicago police, but our politicians here in Chicago, and I can't really put this on Mayor Lightfoot because this actually started with Rahm Emanuel. They would rather pay $90 million for a new training facility for our CPD and then close schools. What message are you sending? I'm not going to say completely defund the police, but I think they need to reprioritize where that money is going. We have so many schools here in Chicago that are closing because of the lack of resources, lack of good teachers. Let's invest in our children rather than investing in the police. That's all I got.
Nice.
Jay?
I 100% agree with that. So in the sense of defund, I think somebody mentioned it in the chat, is reform. And I believe we are at a point where that is absolutely necessary. So one of the biggest things I've seen, I have military in Leo family members. There's been the militarization of law enforcement where local police departments and sheriff's departments have become so militarized that you're looking at forces that have better capabilities, and I mean better by weapons and vehicles than FBI units or CIA units. It used to be something you'd watch a TV show and the local sheriff or the local PD would have to call in the FBI when there was a serial killer. Nowadays, they don't need that. They're completely militarized. There is no de-escalation policy, right? And then again, there are two sets of standards. I have a very close friend that I've known since middle school who went through police academy. His entire family are law enforcement. And at the end of it, after graduation, he was so disgusted with what he saw that he's not a police officer now. He's a Twitch streamer and he uses his platform to talk about reforming and defunding. So I think there's a lot of things that can be done when I can watch a Marine infantryman go in to a hostage situation and take out 6, Iraqi or Afghani enemies and bring them out alive, without firing a round. Why can't we do that with our police departments? Why are we not training in de-escalation? Why do we not have specialized roles in the military? You can be a psychiatrist and nurse. Why do we not have mental health experts showing up to these calls when somebody's, wielding a weapon and threatening suicide or threatening hurting somebody else? And then on the front of black men being shot, it's completely true. When I look at my son and my nephew who live with me, my nephew again is a young black male. My son doesn't have to do the things that my nephew has to do. There was the other night I was sitting out there grilling and they came through. I didn't know. They apparently chose my driveway in the school next door as a training area. And I was grilling. It wasn't late at night. And my nephew came out to grab a soda and they immediately went into hardcore mode on me. Get him inside. And I'm just like, is there something wrong? No, we're training the dogs. Okay, this is my house. I'm on my property. But then my son comes out, who is white. They didn't say a word to him. So there's just so many levels. I could go on and preach about it for hours. And as a white male, that's staggering. As a white male, that I could preach on it. Yes, we need reform. And the only thing I do disagree with, there's a large movement online for ACAB. All cops are bad. That is the one thing I disagree with. What I will say is a majority of the cops, based upon experiences that I've heard from friends and family, yes, they are bad, or the ones who are good are being put out. But that's my view.
Jay, let me say what makes all cops bad is when you're in a force and they have a lot of bad apples. And when you decide not to speak on that, that's what makes you a bad apple. You know what I'm saying? That's what makes you a bad cop. When you know and you say absolutely nothing and you're going along with that code blue or that brother in blue or that sister in blue.
Then blue line.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I understand that as well, but I think I am speaking for those who are trying to speak up, so like my friend Adam, who said, he left because he was watching people speak up and say, hey, this is wrong. We have a racist lieutenant, or we have this person who's abusing Latinos or black men, and who's getting suspended at that point, or who's getting harassed over it. It's the ones who are speaking up, and we are now losing the type of force that we need. So the fact that he dropped out, that's somebody who potentially could have made a difference. But I get what you're saying, ABC. I agree with it.
Yeah, it's hard for me as a mom and as a wife when my daughter, who I have two daughters. One is in the military, she's in the Air Force, and she's getting crap because she's a black woman in the military. And then I have a 15-year, then I have a husband. I have nephews. So it's every time they walk out the door, it's a fear that comes over me if they're going to encounter a cop who's having a bad day. You know what I'm saying? And what his beliefs are when it comes to a black man walking the street or a young black girl walking the street. And that's a fear that is real for us, and that's not what we should have, So it's, I don't know. I don't want to get too emotional here, but it's a real fear.
Yeah, I mean, the damage done over the years by, rogue cops and guys that are not, checked and suspended or fired or what have you, due to their previous actions, or just shifted to another force, which is even worse. Like getting rid of the problem and making it go away doesn't solve the problem. I was the one that brought up reform. Reform has to start like at the top, where it's the people in charge that have to have the power to say, get the fuck out of here, and put in place things like screening, things like training, like not a year's training and that's all you get. But you need several years of training. You need psychological training. You need a background check. You need to find out who these fucking people are that are coming on a police force. And you need to reform the mentality of a police force. There was something that was shared in one of the threads I'm in. That was the Kentucky State Police had a training presentation that they would been giving to their up and coming lieutenants or cadets or whatever. And some of the stuff that was in it, Jay was talking about militarizing. All of it was like half of the stuff was military imagery, and every single damn slide had a big American eagle in the back, like, you are for America and blah, blah, patriotism, blah, blah, blah. And like it became this militarizing mentality. And somewhere towards the back end of it was a quote from Adolf Hitler. It's like, you can't expect guys to detach the person speaking from the quote. Most guys right now, they're not going to detach that. They're going to merge those mentalities together. And so when you're promoting that for a protective force for a state, you are creating a police state, like the negative kind of police state, that is going to have an assumption in their head about who is right, who is wrong, who is good, who is bad. And they're leaving the academy with that mentality. They haven't even been on the streets yet. They have been primed to go out there and expect the worst before they even get out there. So if you can start, you have to completely dismantle that kind of training and mentality at the root, and put in people at the top that can enforce new thinking and new ways of policing and training that treats people with dignity and respect, and are there to serve and protect instead of defend and attack, because that's all they're doing now. they've gone out there charged in their mind that everybody is bad, and it's act first and ask questions later.
We live in a society where you have to have more training to be a cosmetologist than you do a police officer.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And that's freaking huge. Like my dad was not a cop, but he was in law enforcement, and the basically what they had to do every year is they had to make sure that they could still hit a target on a gun every year. That's the only thing they had to freaking learn.
I have even better than that. In the south suburbs where my grandpa mayor at, this happened after he left, but you only have to have 80 hours of police training. 80.
Yeah, my dad doesn't even have he doesn't have a college degree. Like there's a meme going around about like it literally takes more hours of training to become a hairdresser than it does to become a cop. And that's unacceptable. That's unacceptable in our society in general, with it changing so quickly and there being different resources that they have to know about. Like I would like a lot of the funding that's being used to buy freaking tanks to move away to other community organizations for like mental health and resources and whatnot, but also to have a part of that diverted to ridiculously amount of training in the beginning. Because if you are literally coming into a thing going, oh yeah, you're just one of the bros now, yeah, we're good, like that's gonna undo anything that you've done. Is that you have to practice and understand the communities that you live in. You have to understand mental health. You have to understand, the politics of your area. Like none of that is taught. It's just, do you know how to fire a gun? And do you know what a scumbag looks like? It's bullshit. And it's scary that people with weapons have that little of training, let alone people who are supposed to be keeping our communities safe. It's crap. And
If you look at videos of how police encountered, let's say the man with the knife, and yet he was able to walk away and get handcuffed versus a young black kid walking down the street and getting shot in the back. It's always a vast difference, and so we know why that is. We know it's the color. So that's why I'm an advocate of. You know what? I'm about to say something else controversial that some people may not like. I'm going to be honest with you. I think segregation was the worst thing that could have happened to black communities, because you want to know why. It took the black dollar out of the community, and yet it allowed other people to come in to police our communities. And this is what's happening now. No one knows our communities. And there's a strong disconnect. We have police in the schools. They're not doing much. These kids, like my daughter goes to school downtown Chicago. When it was in session, we're talking downtown Chicago on State Street, across the street from Block 37. And yet you have police in that school, downtown Chicago, which is primarily a Hispanic and Black school. Downtown Chicago. But however, if you go to Lakeview or Lincoln Park, you will not see not one cop in that school.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing that I see it. And first, the defund the police, we're going to go back to the bad messaging and the bad communication, the bad marketing, that whole idea. Secondly, you're looking at the history of policing. Then you're going back to the slave patrols, which grew out the modern day police departments. All this stuff that's happening now isn't new things. This is how things, again, have been trained. So you have to do a recreation of the police system if you want to get things fixed and then you want to get things turned around, because there's still that same mentality that's out there. Just a few months ago, I think it was a few months ago, they had a guy down in Texas where the police walked a black guy into town on, like, they were on horseback walking a guy like he was a slave coming in from the fields. There's a lot of mentality out there. Now, I have friends that are police, and I know good police out there, so I never say all, because I think all throws everybody into that same thing. I think all should never be used when you're talking about different groups and things. But those that are quiet do get thrown into the bad. Like, people will say there's only a few bad apples. Like, really? How do you know? What's the number? Because those that are quiet are also to it. But to the other side that was brought up, those that do try to speak out about it, a lot of times they end up losing their job, getting suspended, getting into some other stuff. They don't have the protection they need when they're out there. So they're kind of caught in a bad situation too. All of that has to be reformed. And to me, I say usually reform one. When I grew up, we had community policing. Like, my upstairs neighbor when I was a kid was a police officer. Never had a fear about police or anything like that and everything. They lived in the neighborhood. They knew everything. You have more community policing. Two, You get rid of qualified immunity, just like Colorado did. So now if you do something like that, that's on you. And 3, you start pulling funds from the pension funds of the police. And you will watch shit get handled differently when the money's coming out of their pension funds rather than the taxpayer.
That's true.
Greg?
Yeah, so I want to bring up something that Carla and I talked about, and she brought this to me at a beer bloggers conference. We were talking politics.
You're in trouble, Carla.
Pulling back beers. No, but she opened up a perspective that I'd never seen before, or that I never knew, and it's really gonna affect how it affects how people look at cops. Carla told me that, and I just didn't think of it this way. Carla told me that cops, she believes that white people are brought up that cops are a comfort. Like you call them because they're comforting, whereas as Black people, we ain't trying to call no cops at any time. I mean, unless somebody's literally like rolling up on us. So like, and I was like, I never,
we are literally taught to call. Right. Yeah. We are taught to call cops if you feel unsafe. That is literally what we are indoctrinated with as white people growing up. If you see something bad, if you don't feel comfortable, if you're scared, call a cop. That is literally what they have taught us since we were children. That's why we have all these white Karens doing all this fucking bullshit now.
California, talk to California for the Karen Act.
Literally, we were indoctrinated to believe that the cops were our protectors, not forces of whatever. We didn't see them as justice. It was just like, I feel unsafe, so I should call the cops, which is something that I have had to unlearn because that was my entire bringing up. Like, I have,
It's not that way here. Here with us is you have to be getting murdered for Black people by someone else in order to call the cops. Because if you call, like
the odds that you're going to end up shot, it's ridiculous. It's insane.
You know what's funny? It's kind of like in the Black community, it's kind of, but when you look back, like I said, I grew up in New Jersey, and I have friends that were Italian neighborhood. Like they didn't call the police either because that was like we handle it in the neighborhood.
We did.
Even in some of the Asian areas, it's like the Chinese, like we'll handle it in our neighborhood. You could be Polish neighborhood, whatever, but like. I don't know, but now it's all just everybody can call us up to Blacks. I don't know what it is. Everybody else is okay to still call.
Can I jump off a bit off of Carlos' point?
Yeah,
go for it.
As a white guy, it's actually different in that you're taught. Well, you're the protector. You're the white savior. You're the person that you're supposed to protect people. So like calling the cops is something where it's like. Oh, well, yeah, you should call them if there's like some real heavy shit that you can't handle. But, I grew up in super rural PA. Everybody had guns. Everybody. All of them. And so like you were taught, hey, if you, not necessarily handling it in house, like you said, Rod, but more like, oh, well, you're the guy. You need to go and step up and
break up that fight or whatever.
Break up that fight or do whatever you need to do because you are the first line of defense. Yeah. And that's it's interesting because like I'm not approaching it from your perspective, Carla, because that seems very like, as you said, like kind of like, oh, well, I'm a white woman. I'm damsel in distress almost kind of deal. And so growing up in rural PA and that it's just such a different view because we didn't have a lot of folks of color where I lived at all. We had one kid in my school who was Black, and he was so ashamed of being called Black, he told people he was Hawaiian. Like,
oh,
wow.
I mean, it was because that was a way. That was the
rural people like I'd never been to Hawaii. I don't know. Maybe he is.
Wow. And we're in the middle of it. Most people had not been to Hawaii, so like, well, maybe he is. So I don't know. It's just something like I feel like the police from a white person, rural person perspective is more like that's kind of like if it's getting out of what even you can handle. You're supposed to try to figure that shit out. And
the last ditch effort.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's. I don't know if like. So I'm just going to point to JHG because he's the only other white guy here.
Wait.
So do you see that? Was that something where you were viewed as kind of like, well, I'm the white guy. I'm the guy. I'm supposed to be the barrier to help and protect people.
And you get to see this today too.
It permeates. It permeates a lot. So I can say
it's also tied in. It's also tied into toxic masculinity and all that shit too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say like a lot of this is coming out of a lot of these white boys.
So I grew up a white privilege. White privilege. I was a white.
I grew up a poor white boy.
I've seen this movie.
Right? Yeah,
I've seen this movie.
So,
it was a jerk. I jerk. Goddamn. Holy.
Yeah.
Holy.
So. I lived within a safe space for who I was and didn't get the exposure to diversity like I could have in the places that I lived. My parents didn't, get in the way of me finding that and embracing that either. But there just wasn't enough of it around. I'm a kid of the Midwest, so I grew up in rural Illinois, and you know how many people of color in rural Illinois back in the 80s, early 80s. Not a lot, right?
Probably have more Amish.
And now
ABC, I can't speak for you. So I was like 130 miles west of Chicago. I lived in Freeport, Illinois for like 10 years before I was teen. And so not a lot of diversity out there, right? Yeah. Anyway, but this idea that white men and white people in particular are safe, and the police are a contingency plan or a last resort, like you can take care of yourself, is permeated through all the different mechanisms and groups that are currently out there today, right? So my boys have been part of Boy Scouts for 8 years now, and Boy Scouts in particular is an organization that sells that idea that the police are safe people to go to. The public service and community all stems from these different organizations that are white dominated organizations, and so I find myself straddling a line there to say that you need to trust the people and expand the people that you're with and learn from other cultures and other people. Like for me, Scouts is a good way for me to tell the kids that I have to sort of lead, that there's so much more out there in the world than what's right in your little bubble. Like you need to reach out and expand your horizon and what you're taking in, so you can learn from other people and what their struggles are. And you can't necessarily rely on going to the police or rely on them, but they're not the only people that you can rely on. There's a larger community out there that can help you and support you. And you don't need to rely on the mechanisms of the state and the county and whatever to solve your problems. Your community is the people around you and the people that care for you. ABC, you're about to say.
Yeah, I was going to say, since you said that, I'm going to give you the other spectrum of as to being a Black woman.
Sure.
You don't call the police on your man. It's like we were taught to deal with what you're going through because of the fact of the outcome it can produce.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, I have friends, Black women, who were in domestic situations where they were being physically abused. I'm talking about within the inch of their lives. And they would not call the police on their men because of the fact that this is what they were taught, because of what could happen. So that's why, like, for instance, a lot of domestic violence among Black women goes unreported because of the fear of what could happen if we call the police. It's a fear that we should not have to deal with. You know, yes, we want to be safe. Yes, we want to live freely. But yes, do we want, you know, our men, our sons, our, you know, our nephews to die at the hands of the police? No. So we don't have that gray area where we're comfortable. So it's so funny. Like, I live on the far north side of Chicago in Rogers Park, which is the most diverse area of Chicago. And I still have neighbors to hit me up and say, hey, well, I seen this, and do you think I should call the police? And I'm like, hell no. Because if you call the police, what's going to happen? You're going to get this young man shot and killed for something because of your, you know, you being uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We don't have the luxury, and that's the thing. Quote unquote, Black people do not have the luxury of having a gray area. It's either Black or white.
Yeah. But the only thing that I would say is, like I said, it also depends on the situation. And like where I'm at here, even though I'm in Kentucky, I have no fear about the police here. One of the guys I know, I work out with them, that's one of the cops, and we've never had an issue. But it's kind of like a few years ago, my mom couldn't get reached in touch with us for something, so she called the police to come check, make sure we were okay, and it was all cool. They came by. We grew up in New Jersey, we didn't have any issues back then, and so that kind of gets stuck in your mindset. Nowadays, I would say depends on that situation before I would actually call the police, because, like you're saying, you got to weigh it out. It's not like, hey, I got a cat stuck in a tree, can you come help me out? Versus, you know, Johnny's out there doing something and you're worried about them getting shot. It's two different situations, so you have to weigh that. And I don't know if you have to do that if you're a white person. You don't have to have that weight like you do if you're Black or even Latino. If you're Latino, you have to weigh those situations, or one of the other minorities. But the one thing I wanted to go back on just to mention, because we were talking about the militarization of the police, and while we see a lot of that coming out and a lot of being pushed by the right, we also have to remember there was people on the left. If you look back at the time when they voted on the militarization of the police, 28 of the 34 CBC members in Congress voted for it as well. So the Congressional Black Congress also signed on for it. You have to also take a look into what Joe Biden put out there with the crime bill, which again came from the left because that was basically a Republican type idea as well. But there was a lot of sign off in a lot of the Black communities too, as well, for things. So it's kind of like, again, that's why I can never see being on either party, because they both have these skeletons in their closet. And it's like sometimes we are so easy to push one to one side that we don't see the other ones out there too. And you have to keep an eye on both in that regard.
All right. Can I posit a question? Well, ABC, are you still there?
I'm here. I'm just fixing my cam.
Okay.
She's marching right now, Doug. Can't you see her marching?
So, how, coming from your perspective and how your life has informed you to where you are about calling the police, how do you and what do you instill in your kids as regarding that? Is it just, hey, don't do that? Or is it maybe things will change? Is there, I don't know. Again, as a white guy with white kids, I don't have that concern. Like, not meaning I don't have a concern for your kids, meaning like I don't have a concern like my kids are going to walk out the door and I'm not going to see them again.
You know what? For me, the most striking thing for me was my 15-year-old. She told me after George Floyd had died, she's like, Mom, you know, you prepared us, but I can do everything right if I encounter the police, and there's a high possibility I still don't come home. Mm-hmm. That was real. That was truth for me. You know, I can teach her, I can prepare her and say, hey, you put your hands up, you abide by all the rules, but at the end of the day, it's your skin color that determines if you get to come home or not. So for me, it's like I'm at the point where you take it day by day. You know, and I know, like, for instance, like Doug, for you, you don't have that. You won't have that fear. For me, it's a fear every time my daughter goes out there and walks the dog. If a cop is going to stop her just because she's walking the dog, or if my husband decides he's going to go and run to the store or run to go get beer or whatever have you, it's a real fear. You know, we could be the most polite people in the world, but at the end of the day, it still depends on that cop. So it's hard for me to assess the situation.
Yeah. And it just, from my perspective, I was curious how you approach that with your kids, because again, that's a whole conversation I have not had to have with my kids.
Yeah.
Black families have the talk.
We have
We have the talk.
Yeah.
I try to tell her, I try to say, hey, you know what, if you encounter the police, just do whatever they ask. Even if you disagree, just do whatever you ask. It may, even if the hard part for me is to say, even if it's demeaning, just so you can go home alive. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why one of the worst things for a person to be is an educated Black person when they run into the police, when they know the law, because a lot of cops don't know the law. And when you break it down to them, they get more mad and upset, and then something happens.
Yeah, they find that disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and my thing too about this whole defunding the police is that we don't acknowledge enough, and it's a growing thing, but we don't acknowledge enough that cops are doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Like, meaning we task them with jobs they shouldn't be doing. One is, I'm sorry, and you guys are going to help me out, and I'm claiming I should know, but who was the young man who died this week, who got shot because they called and they asked for medical help, and these people sent cops.
Right.
Yeah.
And we need more. See, this is where defunding the police. So this is where everybody doesn't like the messaging and the wording. This is where, excuse my language, I fucking like the wording. Okay, defund the police. Take some money from these motherfuckers and put it to where it needs to go, which is medical people, caseworkers, social workers,
mental health professionals,
right? Deal with people who are having mental issues. These people this last week called the cops and said there's a mental thing going on. I'm pretty sure they specifically said,
yes, right.
Don't send cops. And there are more and more stories with Black people not calling cops, trying to call ambulances, trying to literally hire an ambulance so that they could get somebody to come that is a medical professional.
You know why they do that?
Of a cop. Now, again, this is where, again, I blame the cops for showing up and all that. I mean, not showing up, but their job is to show up and to apply force. Their job is to show up to apply empathy. Their job isn't to apply medical attention, which many of these people need. And it just gets blown away, and then they literally get blown away. And all they needed is some medical attention, somebody to come to that with a different medical angle, not an enforcement. There was nothing this man did who broke the law. So why are you bringing in enforcement?
What was the police? There was a police force that just recently changed and added like a social worker kind of unit to their department. I forget where it was.
A couple people did it.
I think honestly, and this is gonna sound maybe out of context. Carla, you're generally more up on this than I am, but I think it was in Houston.
I can't speak to that specifically, but I do have a comment about why cops show up to medical calls. So my brother was a paramedic for the FDNY in New York City. He was one of the highest trained, he could rappel down buildings and take you out of a fire and bring you to the ambulance kind of a guy. And he had fights with cops all the time because there are some states and some municipalities where the cops are required to show up to X number of calls in a particular period of time as a quota, and they jump on the ambulance calls to get a check off on the medical ones because they're supposed to supervise the scene. They can do things like tell them not to give somebody drugs or anesthesia. They can say, no, put him back in the back of my car and I'm going to arrest him and put him on a psych hold instead. During the 1%ers, whatever that, 99, we are the 1% or whatever, that protest, they used to take anybody that was on a vagrant call, like there's a homeless guy who's drunk or whatever, would get my brother would get a call saying this guy's passed out, go pick him up in an ambulance. The cops would beat him there, pick him up, and put him and deposit him where the protesters were so that he would cause a problem there. They are literally incentivized to snipe EMS and FDNY paramedic calls because they get credit for it. They get commendations for it. They get counted for it. It counts for them. They don't care about the outcome. It counts that they showed up to that many calls and look how awesome they were doing their freaking job. They're measured on the wrong thing. And there are some, like my brother's in Georgia now. He's a paramedic in Atlanta. In Atlanta, you cannot clear a scene unless a cop tells you it's okay to leave. So when he would pick up somebody who got shot in an ambulance, he had to wait for them to decide that he could leave. Like anything. It didn't have to be a shot. It didn't have to be anything. It was, you had to wait for the cops to show up to release the ambulance because they get for all of it. All of it.
Refund and reform.
And let's not forget, the FBI already told you that white supremacists have infiltrated police departments all around the country. So some of these people out there aren't trying to help the people as much as getting a star, like they had the thing about the squad out in California, the supposed little club they had in other areas.
The star thing is like more problematic for a lot of different reasons.
Again, this whole conversation puts me in mind of Charles Kinsey, the black man who was shot, who he wasn't killed, but he was shot in Miami, Florida. He was tending to his autistic client. He was a caretaker. His client was autistic, and he was trying to tend to him. And here's this man, Charles Kinsey, a black man on the ground with his hands up and saying, "Hey, I'm trying to tend to my client, to my patient."
I remember.
And they still shot him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and keep in mind, what did he ask the cop? Why did you shoot me? What did the cop say? The cop said, I don't know.
I don't know.
That's programming.
Yep. Yep.
Carla, should I go get Riley?
Yep.
Wait. Carla, should I go get Riley? Because I see your dog man on the
Yes, go get Riley, please, if he's not being a pain in the ass.
Riley is always a pain in the ass.
You heard me getting upset, and she was doing the like,
oh my God. Riley's cracking at the door right now, so oh my God.
See, all of this reminds me. No, go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to take this comment here. We're not moving off this comment, JHG, so we can jump back. This is he says the funding of police truly prevents the training of police to de-escalate scenarios.
No,
absolutely not, in my opinion.
I'm sorry. Can you put the question again? I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you put it again? I didn't. Okay.
This is where I think money should be diverted. More training. Again, when I say defund, I mean, I mean what everybody means. I mean that, on some level, I want to say defund just to be strong about it. But no.
Now, keep in mind, Mercy's my buddy. He's actually
better training needs to be a part of this.
Yes. Keep in mind, Mercy's actually over in England, so that's Adam. He's in England.
Sure.
So they don't even have to. Their police don't even have to carry guns unless there's like a real big incident. So they've already started on training. They're ahead of us on how we handle it. Like they can take down guys with knives, not having to have a gun. So just to give you a little background on Mercy.
Yeah, because they have much fewer, like Mercy's saying, they have much fewer incidents because they don't have guns.
And they're trained. They're trained. I've seen videos of like them de-escalating situations in Europe and the UK, and people in the US go, "Oh, that can never happen," and it's like it's happening every day over there. You just have to be trained to do it, and we're not training people to do that.
Yep. So many of these things that we've talked about reminds me of, and I talked about Rodney King earlier. The other thing that it makes me think of from my background, being a white kid, listening to metal music and shit like that.
Yeah.
Back in '92, Ice-T put out a song with his band Body Count called Cop Killer, right? And I remember that, I remember getting that album. I had no idea really what it was about, but it caught my attention. And I was listening to it, and I remember the first time I ever listened to Cop Killer the white kid who never had a problem with police and, grew up thinking that it was okay. Like cops are great, blah, 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 blah. Listening to that song, like my heart was pounding. My heart was pounding because I'd never heard this sort of idea and the outrage that came from a song like that. And it made me really rethink and think about another person's perspective about what they live with and go through. And so that's stuck with me way back. This is talking almost 30 years now. To think about that mentality has been going on for 30 years. The same problems have been going on for 30 fucking years. And because the system hasn't changed, because the system's gotten worse, because of militarization, because of the poor training, because of allowing white supremacists into police ranks and changing the mentality of those who are on those police forces. Yeah. It's so disturbing. And if the problem, a lot of the problem is people aren't listening to the stories that they're being told and taking to heart the messages that are being conveyed to them, because a song like Cop Killer, it really bears down to one of the lyrics is "Better you than me." It's like, what brings you have to consider what brings a black man to have to say "better you than me" when it comes to police, right?
Just a misnomer. Like you said, 30 years for us, it's 401 years.
True.
Just to say.
No, true. No.
401
years. That's right.
Yeah.
but right. But,
which I would tell you, if you want to hear some stuff like the new Public Enemy album that just came out, I know I was going to talk about the new Public Enemy album, the new Busta Rhymes album. Oh my God, just got dropped. Oh my God, it is fun. And the new KRS-One album that just dropped, which I have that free album on my Facebook page. Oh my God, it's just, this is why this goes back to when I was in hip hop back in the 90s and the 80s and DJ. I mean, so much knowledge being dropped, and so many people are going to like, I've never heard this before, but it's so much history out there that people just aren't aware of.
Right.
So can I speak to the Public Enemy part?
Yeah.
Because that was my introduction to rap. Fucking Public Enemy. It was the 80s, and goddamn Kurt Loder from MTV was talking about fucking Public Enemy doing a concert in a prison, and they were worried they were going to do Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos, which is a song all about a prison break. And I remember being like, fuck, I don't know anything about this. I need to go get it. And it was the album It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. I played that cassette till the fucking goddamn print was worn off of it. It was just, it looked like a Memorex tape by the time I was done with it. But like, that was my introduction to seeing like, oh my God, that's a real thing that I don't know. And that's all an existence for folks where you're just like, that is shit they're dealing with that I don't have to deal with. That was a real introductory point for me. So, and just fucking Chuck D's voice is like a goddamn hammer blow every time you hear it, because he just like, he's such a goddamn force. His voice comes through the fucking speakers. You're like, holy shit, I really got to pay attention to this stuff. Like, whatever he's saying has such importance. So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So, I wanted to thank ABC before she leaves us.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to dip.
Thank you for being here, ABC.
I record my 2 shows real quick before I go to bed.
Right? You want to tell us where we can find you?
Plug, yeah.
Yeah, do it.
Well, I got the meat pour. That's the bourbon side, chicken on Blanton's. And then I have ABC. Well, this chick talks beer, so I'm going to record both shows tonight before I go to bed.
And you just, I mean, we all follow you, so we know, but you just assume everybody follows you. Where can we follow you?
On all medias at Afrobeat Chick. I'm sorry, I'm buzzed, y'all. I could drink
No. I mean, we all follow you. We all know where to find you.
Yeah. We love the shit out of you. So thanks for being on.
I love y'all too.
All I'm going to say is, Shalonda, we need to do a follow-up because that last podcast we did was fire. So,
Man, look.
we need to do a podcast follow-up.
I'm going to hit you up tomorrow so we can do that.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks, ABC. We'll see you soon.
See ya. Have a great night.
Thank you, ABC.
Bye.
Man, I just love having her on because there's no shortage of opinion with her, and I love that. Bring it.
Yeah.
Well, so let's get back to real quick. Let's just stay on point here. Mercy Beers, Rod knows this fella here from the UK. So thanks, Rod, for bringing him in. But so he's not, I don't know if he's not up on our laws or anything, but he's asking questions from his point of view. So how does body cams play with cops not following the law?
All right, real short answer to that. The ones that have them turn them off when they're doing bad shit, and most don't have them.
Yeah.
Or they know that whatever the fuck's going to happen after that, they know that's all tilted in their favor because
no, but literally they shut them off.
No, they turn them off. That's why some cities are.
So
they should be automatic.
There's no teeth. There's no teeth to that law. In the UK, they have CCTV and they have a lot more surveillance that they're comfortable with and that they've grown to, kind of weigh the risks of. The thing about the US is that we're so like privacy, that we have resisted that, especially the bad actors like the cops in recording kind of on a continuous basis. So the ones that do have it are the goody two shoes cops that don't like that it accidentally breaks when they're taking down the bad guy. And the ones that don't have it, which is 90% of I would say 90% of the precincts do not have any kind of body cam ability at all. So it's basically a non-existent, nice little fairy tale here right now.
Yeah, I would say where we're at. Actually, a lot of our police departments do have the body cams, but a lot of times they're not on between Cincinnati and Kentucky. And there was always a situation with that. Like when they announced body cams coming out before, I'm like, well, how are you going to control if they turn them on or not? That was always a big thing with me. But you look at the situation with Breonna Taylor being here in Kentucky, that all of a sudden, no one had the body cams of them knocking or saying they announced themselves, which I doubt they did when only 1 out of 11 people said they did. And then that person wasn't even fully sure. And the grand jurors called bullshit on the attorney general, which was great. Like, hey, that's bullshit. You never gave us the option of going this way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yet afterwards, they have body cam footage when they're all in the parking lot and stuff trying to, what's happening. Like, oh, so why weren't they on before you knocked? If you know you're going to do a no-knock warrant, you should have had them on at that time, right? Again, and there's not teeth in it for a lot of these law enforcement officers to do anything to them. There's nothing in there. Like I said, you start hitting them in their pension fund, you start penalizing them there, you take away that qualified immunity, that's going to make a difference. Like I said, that's what Colorado did. People should be following Colorado's plan on that.
Colorado and that whole qualified immunity thing. There was a whole John Oliver show where he talked about qualified immunity. God. And that was so fucking good because it was like,
which one was that?
I don't remember which particular, but talked about qualified immunity, how cops can just presume qualified immunity, so they can just be like,
yeah. And I'll tell you,
and it's akin to like priests and Catholic fucking parishes abusing kids.
I was thinking of that earlier. Yeah,
they can be moved around, and none of that shit follows them, and it happens with cops too. And it's something that's been a recurrent theme through this whole thing is the idea of like power begets power. We're not going to relinquish it. We're just going to redistribute it somewhere else so that stuff doesn't have to have any repercussions for that person.
Yeah, and I'll tell you guys another thing you guys might not be aware of. So where I'm at, I'm Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky, kind of in that 3-state area. Indiana, a few years back, passed a law saying if somebody broke into your house in intrusion and you didn't know if it was a cop or whatever, you shot back, you were protected under the law. Guess what? They stopped serving no-knock warrants right after that happened over there.
Oh, I bet they did.
Imagine that. Imagine that.
Hey, can I ask? So, Carla, your state is a bit different than a lot of ours because there's like huge Republican contingent, and it's pretty rural. I love it. By the way, I told you when I went up to Maine, I was like, "Give me all the breweries I should," because we love going to Maine because my family is not ones that go to a beach and sit on a white sandy beach. I want rocky fucking shit. I want to be chilly. I want woods. I want all that stuff. So like I find it. Yeah, Maine has such an interesting thing because there's a conservative bent, but there's a really liberal bent to it too in a lot of ways. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting and weird state. Like, so I grew up in upstate New York. I grew up in Syracuse, and then I went to school in New Hampshire. And New Hampshire's weird in and of itself, but Maine,
yeah, it is.
They say that there are two Maines. Like, there's the Maine that people come and visit, and then there's the rest of Maine. And the rest of Maine is literally like the rest of Maine is very rural, manufacturing, wood, paper milling, kind of stuff. But then, and moose. Although we have moose down here too. But the thing is that, and then the coast is that touristy, adorable New England clam chowder kind of thing. So, but even within that, so we have two districts in the state, Maine 1 and Maine 2. Maine 1 is the southern district. It's almost always blue. Maine 2 is redder, but we go back and forth. So depending on the election, it can be a little more red, it can be a little more blue, but we are one of only two states that does not award all of its electoral votes based on a majority. So basically we can have one go red, one go blue, and then the other two from the state go whatever way the majority went. There has actually been a lot of campaigning in Maine too, which is actually where I live, the rural part. Because they want that stupid little vote. They want that, Is it
one vote?
It's one. Yeah.
It's an electoral vote.
Yeah, it's an electoral vote.
So there's something like that in Nebraska too. I think is Nebraska.
Nebraska is the other state. We're the only two states that do that. Now we're also the only state that this year we finally get ranked choice voting for presidential candidates. I am so excited about this. You have no idea. We've been fighting this ranked choice vote. So it's an alternative way of voting where you can actually put a second place person in your ballot. We have had ongoing court shit for literally 3 years. We've had it for Senate. We've had it not for Senate. We've taken it off. We've gone to the Supreme Court, but we now actually can rank choice vote. So what's awesome also is that all of these third-party candidates that are challenging Susan Collins, if they can say, okay, I want the Green Party first, but then I really want Sarah Gideon, who's Susan Collins' main supporter. And if there's no majority, they'll go to that second place, and that's an instant runoff vote. So we're the only state doing that too. So you have
the runoff part too.
Yeah, we have the instant runoff, and it has. And the reason we have that is because we elected a governor twice who is a racist dickbag, and he lost the majority vote. He never got a majority in the two times that he was elected. The first time he was elected, there was a Democrat and a moderate, or in an independent. And between the two of them, they got 62% of the vote, which meant that 62% of Maine voted not this guy. And he got elected anyway because he got like 34% versus the 33% of the other guy. We did it twice.
Sounds so familiar.
So we were like, no, because we had a weak Democrat and a strong independent. So everybody wanted to vote for the independent, but then they didn't think the independent was viable. So everybody voted for the Dem. But twice. So we were like, no more. So we are the testing ground for ranked choice voting in the U.S. And I cannot wait to see how this turns out. But the other thing is that because we hate Susan Collins so much, it's a very good chance that we might go blue in the second district just because we're mobilizing so many people anti-her.
She needs to be gone.
So,
I hate when they run stories on her. Like, she's not going to. That's like when they've seen it. They're always like, well,
is she going to change now?
Susan Collins going to do the same damn thing she did before. She's going to go ahead and just flip with the rest of the team.
Every time. I have a chart that I keep putting up on Facebook that people are tired of seeing is that if her vote matters, if her vote matters, she votes with the Republican Party. If her vote doesn't matter and she knows it, then she votes against it to claim that she's a moderate. 100 times she's done this. 100 times. And after Kavanaugh, honestly, everybody was done. We were like, nope, you have sold out. You are gone. So we're trying real hard. I mean, her opponent is okay. She's better than Collins, but she's young. So we're like, But there's a lot of mobilization, and we had that whole.
She's much better than Collins. Much better.
Oh, 100%. And then we had that whole thing where after the Kavanaugh vote, they raised $4 million to whoever Susan Collins' opponent was. Yeah. So that Sarah Gideon got $4 million from like this nationwide PAC that had put money into defeating Collins. So it's really, really, really weird and interesting year.
Can I ask a question? What you guys think of the idea of Jamie Harrison beating Lindsey fucking Graham?
Oh my god!
I want that so goddamn bad.
Oh.
Yes,
I want that so bad. I want that so bad.
Yes.
My last question to the panel was going to be, if you could call a race, any national race besides Donald Trump and Biden. I know we're all.
Or like call it to be correct, or call
it
for what?
Right. No, if you could call a race right now, saying. I'll do it first. I'll start. I would love to just call Mark Kelly and just say he's a senator and fuck Martha McSally or whatever her name is. She's a Trump lackey who knows nothing. And if Trump wasn't like saying stuff, she wouldn't have anything in her head because she just can't think outside of like the Trump box. So mine would be Mark Kelly, and apparently Doug's would be Jamie Harrison.
No, it would not.
Okay. So, Doug,
let everybody else go. I will be last because I have. Oh, do you want me to go now? I'm going to give you two.
Well, I'm going to do two then.
Because one is a fantasy. One is a fantasy that's never going to happen.
Okay.
Kelly McGrath.
Oh my God!
I was gonna say, don't say when we beat in Kentucky. I'll wait till I'm up there.
Fucking McConnell. I'd like that turtle-faced motherfucker to die an ugly death. I do not wish ill on anybody. But McConnell has been worse for this country than Trump.
Yes.
By a mile.
Yes.
By a mile.
By a mile. Because he's the Cheney of the Bush era. He's the one in the background making sure that all the right strings are pulled to make the maximum evil happen. Like that's it. Yes. That's
Mitch McConnell, like Ann Coulter is done with him. Like
yeah.
That's a bad conservative thing.
Even she's done with him, is what I'm saying. Yes. Carla.
That's my fantasy one.
I'm still gonna put my McConnell. I have been wanting her gone for a really, really long time, and we have been trying so hard. Like every time I tell someone I'm from Maine, the first thing that used to happen to me before all of this nonsense was, "Ooh, can you get me Maine Beer Company lunch?" which is a beer, and now it's you're voting out McConnell, right? Or you're voting out Collins, right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm trying. I can't do it all year long. I'm trying. I want Susan Collins to go home with her tail between her legs. That's what I want.
So you're staying close to home on this one.
I mean, I have been wanting it for years. So that's I can't have more passion than that. Like at this point.
You have one?
I know you guys would like for me to say.
Second one.
No. This has nothing to do with what we'd like, Rod. What do you want?
Right.
Yeah, what do you want?
Tell me. Yeah,
what do you want, Rod? What do you want?
I thought we were making predictions. That's why I would say.
Oh no.
No, you're calling a race. You're saying one.
I mean, I would like being in Kentucky for McConnell to lose. Mm-hmm. I just don't see it's going to happen.
I don't either.
I just went on vacation a weekend ago, and we were down in southern Kentucky and rural Kentucky. I mean, like 6 Kentucky, where you can still see the American flag and you can see a Confederate flag. You see all kinds of stuff. And there were signs Republicans for Joe Biden, not as much as the Trump signs, which is interesting. And I will say the polling place I'm at now, I went by it earlier today. I already did my vote, dropped off the official ballot box. The line was a lot longer than it usually is, which usually is a good turnout for the left versus the right. Right. But there's a lot of people getting concerned. So we're kind of in a more of a reddish area, but there are some suburban people I think that are concerned about Trump actually getting a second term. I just don't know if there's enough there, but I would like to see Joni Ernst gone. That'd be one person I would want to see gone. Joni Ernst to lose her race, although I've seen some things she may have pulled back ahead in Iowa, but Susan Collins is another one.
Joni Ernst pulled ahead by 2 today.
Yeah, but then again, you can't go by the polls, right? So we know.
No, there's always an error. And I don't trust. Hey, I don't trust any fucking poll.
Well, Doug,
2016 made me have such PTSD.
Okay, Doug, great. But what about 2018? Did you follow the polls then? Did you see how
I did.
Okay, and they were accurate, motherfucker.
But even before 2016, you had 2000. You had 2000, which came down to Florida, essentially, in the Supreme Court, which is why Trump's stacking the Supreme Court now.
And 2016 was James Coleman's fault.
2012.
Yeah, you're right, Carl.
I wouldn't put it on Comey. I put on Hillary. I put that on Hillary. I put that on Hillary. Hillary didn't go to the places she needed to go to. I put that on Hillary as well.
The election, James Comey was like, "Oh, actually, we're going to look at those emails again," and that is when I had a panic attack because I knew.
I think Hillary took an assumption and it wasn't there.
No, Rod.
JHG,
sorry, Jamie. I didn't get mine yet, JHG. I didn't get mine yet.
I love people who cite polls and then say they don't believe them, Doug. Anyway, JHG, who's the one you want to call? And then we got to get back to Doug for his any race you can call that you just say that person's going to win, and that's just who you want. Who is it?
Ossoff in Georgia.
Yes.
I want him to take out Purdue. I want Purdue gone. So fucking sick of Purdue. That debate moment where Ossoff caught him and just burned him,
and then Purdue canceled.
Purdue just sat there and like, what? No, what? He was almost twitching. That was fantastic. So I want Ossoff in there. I mean, and in part because my brother lives in the Atlanta metro area. He's in Gwinnett County. So
is my brother.
And there's a symbolism with Ossoff too, in my opinion. And the symbolism is we didn't get to talk about it tonight. Unfortunately, we're not going to because it's a big rabbit hole conversation. But if Ossoff wins, in my opinion, they finally are breaking out of or trying to break out of all the voter suppression in Georgia. And I think that's big because they want nobody, minority, women, black, voting down there. So if we can get any of these Democrats that are, or even Joe goes over the limit, that's going to be a good symbolistic thing as far as us trying to beat out this this dangerous and horrible and heinous voter fucking suppression. Doug, you said you had another call and I cut you off and went to Carla. So you said Jamie.
I can't remember if she's in. I think she's in Georgia. It's Kelly Loeffler.
So Loeffler is a special election against Collins, who is equally bad. Like he's the less talk about lesser of two evils. Loeffler is worse.
Well, Loeffler is also getting fucking housed by the fucking WNBA.
Yeah.
Their team. She owns a team.
Yeah.
And they're like, fuck that. Vote for the other person. And she was furious.
Yep.
Oh, damn.
I remember that. Yeah.
And her husband's the head of the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah. I didn't know that. Holy shit.
Yeah. And I'm going to go a little farther with that real quick.
Yeah.
All right, Carla, you can be next. Sorry, just give me a moment.
Go.
Her and her husband divested themselves of all sorts of shit when they knew the COVID was a lot worse than people knew.
Oh, there's more than them. More than them. That was on both sides. There were people on both sides that got out of stuff.
I'm sure
that may be true, Rod, but
it
was way more for folks on the right. I'm sorry, it really was. I'm not saying that there wasn't people on the left who did that.
Yeah,
I'm thinking it's way more in the right.
I just know that because I'm in the financial world working, and we saw
you have a bigger view into that. But Loeffler had people who she was employing, like fucking openly campaigning for the other.
She was one of the big ones.
Love that. Yeah.
Carla, you had something?
Oh, I was just going to say, I also want to talk about who we want out of the cabinet when Trump loses. Like,
oh my God, everybody.
Betsy DeVos can, just walk off of the cliff as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think they're all out of the cabinet, aren't they? Like,
I know. They're like, people looking for most sitting there come up and like, I don't want to ever hear Betsy DeVos's name ever again. I don't want to hear Ben Carson weigh in on anything ever again.
By the way, if someone who is a fucking brain surgeon, he's a brain surgeon.
But the thing is,
you got people.
you don't have to be intellectual to be a brain surgeon. You just have to be very skilled with your hands. No, literally, you have to train to be dexterous, not smart. They tell you exactly where to go and exactly what to remove.
Chris, it's Chris.
You don't have to be an academic to do that. Like, you just have to have very, very skilled hands, which I'm sure he does. He has no business doing anything housing related.
No, because Carla, he was a black guy. They had to put him in HUD. I'm just saying. He was a black guy. That's where they had to put him. Oh, wait a minute. Is Surgeon General open? No. We got somebody else for Surgeon General. We're going to put you into the black, well, not the black, but, the Housing Urban Development. We're going to put you over there.
That sounds black.
So, Greg and Rod, how do you guys feel about the idea that, like, they're like, look at our token black guy. We're going to put him here.
Is you know what? You're so used to seeing it. You're just used to seeing it. It's just it's everyday life in America.
It's
as bad as when you hear like Obama speaking. They say, "Oh, he's so articulate. Like, what's he supposed to talk like?"
It's from Trump's bracket. That's what Trump knows from his time at trying to create housing in New York.
Being black and anti-black pays well.
Mm-hmm. Hey, we're talking to you, Candace Owens, motherfucker.
Who's that?
We're talking to you. We're talking to you, Candace Owens.
Shots
Candace
fired.
Candace Owens, the Hodge twins,
Diamond
and Silk. Diamond and
Silk are worth $4 million.
But let's just touch on one thing now, because I keep seeing flack and hearing flack, and I'm like, I feel like we're such a headline thing that people don't dig deep into stuff. It's like the whole Ice Cube thing. It's like he actually presented stuff that he was wanting to talk to with the Democrats and the Republicans, and the Democrats said, well, no, we'll talk about that later or whatever. And so he ended up, taking a meeting with some of the Republicans. I'm like, I'm not mad at him for trying to do something like that. Everybody's like, oh, he's trying to sell out. He's like, no, it's not. It's just, that's business. People hate it when, look at all the stuff that Jim Brown did in the past. And then people got on him when he met with Trump. It's like watching both stations that we talked about earlier. People still have these different meetings. Doesn't mean they're definitely on board with everything. So it's kind of like the whole Ice Cube thing. It's like, to me, it's kind of like so under the bridge. It's just like not even phased on it.
That didn't bother me with the Jim Brown stuff. What bothered me was Jim Brown's a fucking wife abuser. That's more of my problem.
You might have more in common with Trump. I don't know.
Maybe that's
how does Trump get the evangelical vote anyway? Like, of all the stuff that you do that you're not supposed to do in the Bible, it seems like Trump did everything you're not supposed to do.
Oh, Carla, please.
Carla, bring it, Carla.
Because when you have somebody who has all of that, scandal like out in the open that it's okay or whatever, it means that they will never be scrutinized themselves. So all of that insider baloney, disgusting shit that happens within those churches about adultery, about kid abuse and all that stuff will never come to light, because we've already elected somebody who's been accused of all of that and went right through it. No one's ever going to give him a second glance. And if he's willing to pretend that he's going to be that religion, they will freaking write him off to the moon. That's no way.
And they will all subscribe.
I know Jim Jones had good Kool-Aid, but damn.
Yes, Mersey, you are right, but he gave them that vote because fucking Steve Bannon went like, dude, you need the evangelical vote. Put this fucking dumb shit in here. And Pence, by all accounts, actually had a real crisis of conscience about Trump.
When?
No, when Trump said, I'd like you to be my vice president, and then the Access Hollywood tape come out. And then Pence,
Mother, my pearls.
Yes.
Mother, my pearls.
Mother, where are my pearls?
Mother, that's messed up. I'm sorry, it's messed up.
And if you're a super religious person and you value the Bible, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. What I am saying is if you're doing that and you're supporting Trump, then you are supporting all the seven deadly sins, all of them.
Yeah, all of them. It's like,
oh no, but the churches have said that he's the divine way. That's the thing, is they have taken the thing that God was sent them, Trump. Like, that's literally what they're repeating
He also sent them Obama, and they fucking rejected Obama just all fucking ways. Why did
Which
they
is
do
why I
that?
always say Bible is the one thing created that was probably the worst thing ever created. Control minds. It's just
That
it's I mean, I'm not
Well,
against
I'm
religious
giving you a
people.
high
I have religious family, and but let's face it, it is a cult. It is a cult because you're learning to believe a certain way and to follow a certain set.
Yeah.
That's the definition of a cult. I'm just saying.
Yep.
Just
Especially
saying.
So then, Rod, you just explained why it's easy for them to segue to the cult of Trump.
Right. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
well,
Because
that one dude that has got busted in that cult got 120 years. I know that.
Hey, divergent. You went to has anybody else watched The Vow on HBO?
My wife was all over that show, and I was
Oh my word. That's what you're talking about, Rod.
Yeah, he got 120 years. Yeah.
And it is just
The Vow.
The Vow.
Yeah, he led this cult.
It's about Nexium, which is a upstate New York. Hey. It's that thing. So upstate New York is responsible for that and also Mormonism. So we're great.
Really?
Is it a documentary?
Yes. Well, and what's interesting is The Vow is about this thing where basically this guy named Keith Raniere decided that I'm going to create this thing, which is a quote unquote self-help thing. What I'm going to do is show you how you can unlock your potential. Blah, 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 blah. Jim Jones, blah. Kool-Aid. And it turns into a sex cult. And look at the guy right there on the right.
Ew.
What does he look like? Look at him. Look at his hair.
Like Jesus with glasses.
Yeah,
Jesus with glasses.
Trying to look like Jesus.
I saw an ad for this today. Okay.
And I'm going to tell you, he actually had the Dalai Lama come and interview him.
Jeez. Now I get it.
And the Dalai Lama said you need to understand and accept your guru. And he went, "Don't call me a guru," to the Dalai Lama.
To the Dalai Lama. Okay.
Wow.
And I'm gonna tell you, you're gonna watch that. And Jill and I watched that, and we were just like, so a little background. Jill was come up in an evangelical background, a very, very evangelical background. So she was inured with the super evangelical Christian. I'm gonna pound that with you, and that whole Nexium stuff is exactly like what she was fed.
Gross. Oh, that's so gross.
There's
It may.
You know
You're not wrong.
It's because sex is control. It's because sex is control. It's just that's it. Is that sex is control, and so is reproduction is control. So that's the core of all of it.
Let me ask Carl. I want to ask Carl a question, Wesley, because that's the first time I got a chance to talk to Carl. So, what are your thoughts on Amy Coney Barrett or whatever, and any concerns after the Supreme Court and stuff like that?
I think actually a good segue.
I try really hard not to like hyperbolize. Like I am very worried at the very beginning. I'm very worried because she's completely unqualified. Like she literally has no knowledge of the law. She's never tried to.
She couldn't name all the parts of the First Amendment.
Well, you forgot the protest one. In a time like this, you forgot about protests.
However, I am, honestly, in the last 10 years, I've been very, very, very concerned about the pathway that we're going towards the Handmaid's Tale and the whole stripping away of reproductive freedom that we have gained. So there's a lot of backsliding there that is really scary. And it's scary to the point that in 2020, we shouldn't be worried about whether or not we're going to be trapped in an accidental pregnancy and have to raise a kid, or we shouldn't, have to worry that we're going to be the ones to drop out of the workforce in coronavirus to take on, as women, to take on the labor of the house, which has happened. I don't remember what the number is, but tons of women stop working because they have to do the childcare now, right? Right. So there's also a systematic erosion of all of the things that we started to do in the 90s, like to put back safe and legal abortions, safe and legal and free healthcare just for women in general, domestic abuse protections and all that stuff. We made marching progress, and then this really religious wave of right has come into the government and peeled it away. Taking away, forcing you to get parental consent to have reproductive health care, to have if you're below a certain age, stripping away all of the free birth control and whatever that was put in Obamacare and all of that stuff. So Amy, whatever her name is like kind of like the Trump of the women's health regression. Right.
I mean, you couldn't get anybody more opposite.
She's the pinnacle of what we were leading to. And it scares me to death that there are decisions she's going to have to weigh in on with A, such extreme views, and B, again, aligning with that wave of taking rights away from women. And I don't, it scares me, but I'm trying not to be like hysterical about it. Like, oh my God, she's a handmaid and she has all these wackadoodle ideas. But like, I like to give some benefit of the doubt that she might be objective, but she's going to be objective within a system that wants to reject the progress we've made as women. And that is a problem.
Well, she's an originalist. And Mississippi already tried to apply for a white case to go through the Supreme Court, so they're not going to hear, but it's going to be other states applying, I'm sure.
But
by the way, The Handmaid's Tale is based on the cult that Amy Coney Barrett is a part of.
Jeez.
No. How many of you really have actually read The Handmaid's Tale?
I haven't seen it or read it. No.
Okay.
I've read it.
The terrifying thing about The Handmaid's Tale, as it is written, is not the apocalyptic society that they end up in. It's the fact that the steps that they took to get there are way too easy to imagine occurring.
Yep.
So it's told in flashback, right? So you start with this apocalypse, this could never happen. And then you get these little pieces of how it happened and how it got built and how this happened. Oh, and then suddenly you can't have your own bank account. And and they literally like went into this religious theocracy as opposed to any kind of a representational society as a response to a crisis. So all of this, like the coronavirus and everything else, it's the steps. I call it near-term apocalyptic fiction because you can envision how we get there, and that is what's terrifying. Not the actual end. It's the steps that we're on the path to get there. That's what's terrifying.
Well, it's like how do you eat an elephant one piece at a time? You just keep doing it. Next thing you know, the elephant's gone, and here you are.
Yeah,
and that's the thing is like the problem with the So I'm going to go a bit tangent here, in that like the religious freedom thing really, really fucking bothers me because the religious freedom argument, the religious freedom argument is not about having the freedom to practice your religion. You can practice your religion in America any fucking way you want. You really can. You don't have to curtail any religious thing you want to do. What religious freedom is about is oppression of anything that doesn't fit to what those in power
control
think
it's all.
Yes. So the idea, like as Carla very succinctly pointed out, is like you can look at The Handmaid's Tale. You watch the very first season of that, and you're like,
"Yep."
With Trump, I could see all of that shit happen. All of it. You could see just, all right, well, we're going to take over the government. All of a sudden, we're going to have military in the streets. We have military in the streets now. Not about reproductive rights, but that's not a far jump.
Yep.
It's not a far
jump. The Supreme Court makes a decision. People start protesting. Military's in the street.
Yep.
No, it reminds me of somebody made the analogy of a frog soup. So, like,
yes,
you guys know this one, right? You make a pot of nice cold water, you put a frog in, the frog's like, yeah, it's cool. Then it starts to heat up, and the frog's like, ooh. And then the lid goes on top. And next thing you know, you got frog soup, and the frog didn't even know.
And I think that also the infuriating thing is that when someone calls the alarm and says, "Hey, I smell frog cooking," and no one believed them because they think they sound crazy, then that's a problem. That's the problem with her being in that kind of really, really out there sect is people going, "Oh, you're just overreacting. She would never actually do that." And it's like,
Just shut up and listen. Yeah,
but I also sympathize with, like, for example, Shalana earlier, like, too. We haven't been listening to Black people forever either. Like, y'all need to just listen to the fact that this has been going on in a progressive way forever. And suddenly now we're all like, oh no. And it's like, no, y'all haven't been listening to anything that women have been saying, anything that Black women have been saying for all this time. And suddenly, because it's on freaking Twitter, then now you believe it.
You know what the funny thing is, though? People have been listening. They haven't been paying attention. Like, they listen to the blues. They listen to the blues. They listen to NWA. This is Public Enemy. But they're just kind of in the entertainment mode. But they're not really paying attention.
Yeah,
it's kind of like white man can't
here.
Yeah,
it goes there.
It's like white man can't jump in the car. Like, you can listen to Jimmy,
out.
But do you hear Jimmy? You know,
Right.
when Wesley Snipes is talking to Woody Harrelson.
Right.
Right. That leads me to another note, which is you listening to Black music and being influenced by all that. And you brought up Ice Cube, and then on our side chat here, Lil Wayne was brought up, and I just want to put out a point here, because anytime any of these Black rappers or Black people come out and say, "Hey, I'm for Trump" or whatever, and people are like, or they position themselves where they say they like Trump or whatever, and people are like, "Oh, Trump is just pandering to the Black vote." See, I really don't. I always push back on this, because I really don't always see it that way. I absolutely see it, and I see that Trump is more likely saying, or he's trying to court these people so his white friends don't think he's racist. Like, you're not flipping any Black people on Kanye and Lil Wayne and Candace Owens. They're not.
That's a really good point.
They're not changing any Black people's mind. Just like Rod. Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, those guys were in the primary. And how many Black people supported them? The answer is very little, because they didn't even make a vote. So my point is that I hate this narrative that all of a sudden, because Lil Wayne comes out, that's going to slow some Black people. Like, Black people we are as skeptical of Black people as we are of white people when it comes to politicians. And ABC said a couple of her lines were talking about that. I don't think she specifically hit it, but around what she was talking about. She, we don't trust politicians, period. So it can be Kamala, it can be Cory, Cory by all means is probably one of the nicest guys on the planet. Don't he's a really nice guy. Like, you can tell, he's a guy you would have a beer with. And Black people were like, meh. And Kamala Harris, seriously, Black people were like, meh. And you heard ABC tonight, she's like, meh. And there are a lot of Black people around know that when you say Kamala Harris, we're like, I mean, it's nice and it's great, but I really have to push back on that. Donald Trump positions himself so he only cares about his base. So we can't, in my opinion, I don't think he cares about Black people. I don't even think he cares about Black people's vote. I think he cares more about he thinks I can get all the white people to vote for me. That's his angle.
But it's also, that's insightful as hell, because it's also convincing the other white people that are going to vote for him that he doesn't have a problem with Black people. So that gives me as a white person ammunition to tell my friends, Lil Wayne likes him, so he must be fine with the Black community. It hasn't, that is so spot on. And I never thought of it that way, but that's exactly
Donald Trump is
also, hold on right 1 second too. This is another thing a lot of people don't acknowledge, and it's the truth. With all due respect, all those guys are rich because of white money, not because of Black money.
Right.
So there's that angle too. Like, again, hip hop is Black people running around, yes, and there's some white people, yes, but there's a lot of white money, if not a big swath of white money, that makes hip hop people who they are. So then when you address that, you're literally talking to the people who put money in Lil Wayne's pocket, which is white people. Go on, Carla.
No. I'm just, that's.
So
Ron, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was.
But he ain't going to tell me how to vote. So
Donald Trump. I mean, he's the biggest narcissist right now, right? That we have probably in the country, and it's all about his ego, and to a point, how people look at him and how he wants to be remembered. So he wants to get a few what he may consider Black influential people in and stuff, but he's even out of whack thinking that. And people have to stop thinking like we're all monolithic type group anyway. Like people think we're all going to be doing this. Like I don't even, honestly, in the days I've been in hip hop and loving hip hop, being there from the beginning, I'm not even a huge Lil Wayne fan anyway. I don't really like a lot of stuff he does. I don't think he's really all that. I mean, he's a great producer. He knows how to put stuff together for that generation. But when you look at how hip hop was actually started, what it was actually about, he's not in something I would put in hip hop for. Someone like, you know, like we were talking about Chuck D and Public Enemy and KRS-One, all those guys that kind of have that. When I was in school, like in the 80s to 90s, we actually, you know, we had like medallions we would wear to support Africa. We had like most of my heroes on apparel stamp T-shirts. Like generations today wouldn't have stuff like that. I mean, they may now because of Black Lives Matter and all that stuff, but back then we were doing all that stuff where Lil Wayne, we would say he doesn't really care that much about politics. He doesn't really know all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. He said that over the years as well. So him doing anything out there doesn't get my attention too much. But yeah, as far as the music, we know that when you have more of the white kids, because they have more of the fun, they have more of the money, that were going to concerts. Chuck D even said when they had their first Public Enemy concert, they went out there, it was like 60% of the audience was white. They were like, whoa. But then they went ahead and put the show on, right? So
and I was one of them.
Yeah.
and I'm going to tell you, there's a real weird thing for suburban white kids or rural white kids is to kind of empathize with a group that has a fucking, they have a real fucking grievance. I had no fucking grievance. I was lower middle class white. That doesn't mean it doesn't mean I had everything. You know what I didn't have? I didn't have to worry about food. I didn't have to worry about my kids, like my brother going out and fucking getting shot by cops. I didn't have any of that shit. So
Doug, maybe a lot of them are there. The reason you were there, which is perspective. Maybe they actually enjoyed that.
And even to Doug's point, like talking about that, because one thing we didn't talk about here.
I think Dave Sheed felt that too. I'm sorry, Rob.
Oh, no problem. Well, one thing we didn't talk about earlier, like where Doug was at, I know areas around the country where it's poor white kids that were treated as bad as black kids as well by police and stuff too. So there was a kind of a thing of an economy or economic type part in there as well. So some people were in a bubble, and it's when you get knowledge that you're in that bubble that you can actually become, I think, more of a higher level type person and start to understand more of what's actually happening around you. Some people don't want to leave the bubble. It's like the Matrix. You know, Joey Pantel's character, he was like, no, just give me these promises out. He's eating the steak. You give me the pill. I won't remember anything. And I'm back in. I'm happy being back in there. You know, he wanted to go back into the bubble. So some people have that type of lifestyle too.
I did not. What I had was like this idea of like, I'm living this particular life, and there is a section of people who are just getting the fucking shit kicked out of them every day. I don't get that. Like, so I was, like I said, I wasn't wealthy. I didn't have everything I wanted or needed, well, I had everything I needed. Let's put it that way. But like, I didn't struggle. I was like, okay, well, I don't have that. Well, then, all right. So I can go do a job and I can make money and I can go do this. But again, I was a white kid in a rural town.
Yeah.
I might have been poor, but I was not struggling. Way different dynamic. So I hear this guy speaking with this voice that, and again, Chuck D's voice is one of those voices in rap. You hear it and you just are like, whatever the fuck that guy's talking about, I want to hear what the fuck that guy's talking about, because holy fuck, it sounds
important.
Everything sounds important and urgent, and it was.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to, I swear to you, Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos, even though it was my introduction to rap.
I'm going to put that on tonight.
that one is one of my most, it's honestly one of my most favorite rap songs, only because it gives me a look into something that I didn't see. And people in this group probably know that I've also been in prison. I was a gambling addict and I did a lot of shit that made me get in prison. And guess what? I was a white guy in a system that was not designed for white people. So it doesn't mean I was treated shitty. I was actually treated very well because I was a white kid and all the guards are white. It's a different beast. Like, I look at something where this guy's talking about like all these guards that just fucking kept fucking with him and just like putting him down, and just like I saw that with other people. I saw that in person to other people later on in life. It wasn't when I was looking at this album, but like I can remember just being like in my brain playing this album as I was in the middle of this shit.
Yeah, the guards were symbolism for other things happening too.
Yeah. And it was something that I didn't get. Like at the beginning, I was like, "Oh, this is so raw," and this is this guy fucking just voicing what the fuck his community is going through, and I don't understand it, but I want to learn more. And I wanted to get more, and then I went into the system, and I was like, "Holy fuck, this is like." Way more real than I thought it was.
Well, even to like that song like we were talking about earlier, like when they tried to recruit you from the military, it's like, yeah, I got a letter from the government. I opened, I read it. It said they were like, I didn't care about their government because I wasn't going to benefit because people didn't benefit that were like me. So,
yep. So sorry on that tangent, but that was just something that I just remember being really, really important to me in my youth.
And on that note, we're going to close.
Yeah, because it's what, 3 fucking hours? This has been
turn the clock back an hour tonight. The clock goes back an hour tonight.
That's right.
That's true.
We gain an hour.
So
that means I'll wake up tomorrow with less sleep and like still having to do the same amount of shit around the house. This is great.
2020, baby, 2020.
We'll skip over all the predictions. We'll skip over that.
No, it's not.
I hope,
are you doing a presidential prediction?
What, Doug?
Doug,
trying to get out of here. What are you screaming at me for?
Don't skip over predictions. I want to hear what people think. I want to hear people, whether they're pessimistic, optimistic. I want to hear it all.
Are you doing a presidential one? Is that what we're doing? Presidential?
Yeah, we have to do presidential. I want to hear what y'all think about the presidential one. I really do.
Go down that rabbit hole. Rod, sir.
Briefly, everybody. Briefly.
Are we doing a prediction for the winner, or like predicting like what key states may?
No, just predict. No, predict the winner and what's going to happen, just generally.
I think Biden may pull it off. I think I'm going to say Biden pull it off. And you're going to see a flipping back of Michigan. And you never trust fucking Florida.
Dude. Tiger King makes you not trust Florida ever.
Possibly North Carolina, and he'll hold Wisconsin. So he's going to get the areas I think that Hillary didn't get as far as that. And Pennsylvania will be a big play for him, I believe, because the Philly activity is their biggest district. And that's going to, I think, give Biden what he needs. Remember, it was like, 40-something thousand votes. And we're already at 62% of the vote count of the 2016 election.
JHG,
that was going into today.
Next.
I'm next, huh?
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be tight in the end because I have this feeling that we've had this surge of voting, right? The 62% of voting from last year has already happened. We're going to have a final surge on election day because people missed their deadline, whatever. So I have a feeling that we're not going to hear a declared winner on election night.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. Two, it's going to be Biden, barely, and then all fucking hell is going to break loose, and we're going to have a shitstorm from November until January 20th of any kind of crazy wackadoodle fucking shit that Trump could possibly pull between now and then. And he's not going to show up for inauguration. He's going to disappear. He is. He's gonna fucking ghost.
Hallelujah.
He's going to ghost. He's not going to be around for that shit because he does not want to look like the loser. He's going to try and go out in a ball of flames and blow everything up before he walks out that door or gets carted out.
Carted out.
That was
all right. Carla, what do you think?
Similar, but so I do think that if you actually count everything, that Biden's going to win by a lot. The problem is that all of the Democrats voted early and all the Republicans are voting late. So on election night, the exit polls of election night are going to be red, and they're going to be scary, and they're going to look like Trump won. And then as they count the absentees, as they count the mail-in ballots, Trump is going to start whining about the fact that, oh, all these votes came out of nowhere and court. There's no way we're going to get declared winner on November 3rd, something that I am absolutely like, my anxiety level is through the roof about. I cannot handle it. But I already went through that with George W. Bush, so I guess hanging chads, woohoo. But I do agree, though, with JSG, though, because I think it's going to be a throw everything but the kitchen sink at fighting the mail-in validity of everybody who voted not in person. And I think that this, and I'm worried about it, which is why I'm voting on the day. I don't trust it. I don't trust a single soul in the post office. And I also don't trust that they're going to count or validify anything that didn't happen on the day. So, however, in the end, if everything is actually counted, I do believe that Biden has the support to win and to win the Electoral College. There's some really crazy signs about young people voting that have freaked me out in ways that are like way better than I ever expected, because they were so apathetic in 2016 that they just didn't see any winner there. But I think they understand the urgency of what's going on here. So I actually think that there's a great chance that there's a blowout in the popular vote. I think, but that red late and the blue early is a problem, because it's not just 62% of everybody voted early. It's all the Dems voted early and all the Republicans are going to show up on the day. And that's not normal for us. And we don't know how to handle that. And Trump with his ridiculous hyperbole about everything. It's going to be a horrible time from now until January, to be honest.
Yes.
So, Greg, you want to go or you want me to?
You, because mine's going to be vastly different than all yours.
All right, so mine is an optimistic view. And I'm going to explain a few things why. So, Carla, your point that like a lot of Dems voted early, but a lot of Dems voted via mail.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a lot of struggle with counting votes. I really believe that a lot of courts are going to side with like allowing votes. There's going to be a handful like in fucking crazy fucking super conservative places are like, fuck that. Like, no, I don't think. I think there is I have a son who's 19. It's his first time voting. All those folks, all of them that I'm in contact with, none of them are Republican. None of them. Not a single fucking one. And they are all like, we need to vote. When I was 18, like my parents like, you should vote. Yeah. And it was not like a pressing thing. It was like, yeah, you should probably vote. They didn't care. But like now that shit is like you need to go fucking cast your vote. You need to get in this, because otherwise, like the thing for my parents is like, well, if you don't vote, then you can't bitch about what happened. You just can't, because you didn't vote. You don't have a stake in it. You decided not to. So a lot of the younger vote, a lot of it is active. So I have one kid who's 19, one 16, one 15, one 13, and all of them are like, I wish I could vote. And none of them are voting for Trump. I want to give you some hope from the idea that like the younger generation is in on progressive values. They're in on actually at least moderate values, at least like, hey, Biden's not where I want to go, but at least he's a stepping stone away from fucking Trump. Let's fucking get to the point where we can actually go, all right, here's this moderate point. Let's move forward from there. That's where you get your AOCs, that's where you get Ilhan Omar's, you get all those folks who are more progressive. And the problem is they classify as socialism. half of our economy is socialism.
They
Half.
don't know that either. It's education.
No, Rod, you're right. They don't.
Right.
They think that they think roads and police and fire people and all that are just part of the no, that's socialism. That's like everybody getting a piece of a collective tax thing.
Yep.
So to me, I'm going to say this, and I'm saying it as a positive thing, but I'm also doing a caveat of it's 2020, everything fucking goes weird. But I think on election night, now how it plays out after that, I think election night is Biden all the way. I don't think it's close.
Man, Doug, we're closer than we thought. I think it's going to be an electoral landslide. I think we're going to know mostly before we go to sleep, because I think, again, places like Texas and Georgia are going to be
also if Texas flips to blue, everything's done.
I know. How exciting is that?
He can't.
That would be glorious.
See, because unlike most people, I'm a firm, and I want to say it again, firm believer of polls. Firm. All you people were doubting, and I don't know, I'm not talking about the panel. Everybody was doubting these going into the primaries. Is Joe Biden, are those his real polls? Does he really have that support? And it was funny because, and even the pollster said the first couple runs, the first couple primaries, Joe's not going to do well. First couple primaries, Joe didn't do well. And they were like, this is his firewall, South Dakota. If Joe does what we think he's going to do, it's going to be, blah, blah, blah. Joe did what the polls said. I was doubting the polls in the primary, okay? And the polls turned out there. They turned out in 18. They turned out in 2012. They turned out in 2018. I can keep going if you want, but I think you guys get the point here is that 16 had a lot of different crazy things, and people having all this anxiety about 16 or pointing to 16 because you want to deny the science of polls, you can go right ahead. But to me, you're almost like an anti-vaxxer. I'm sorry, because you're picking and choosing which science that you would like to participate in, and polls are scientifically done. Yes, some of them are worse. Yes, some of them are better. But again, if you take the whole polls thing, Joe's going to win. He's been over 50%. Another poll I like to cite is 50% of people said starting last summer that they will refuse to vote for Donald Trump. So refuse. These are registered voters. 50% refuse. So that when you see Joe has 50%, 52, 53%, it just all falls in line. Donald Trump has listen, part of his thing is fear. He wants us to fear that it's going to be close enough that he could play his fucking shenanigans and shit. But I actually think about it in a weird way. I think that Donald Trump needs to be ahead for him to call shenanigans, not behind. Because if all your theories are true, that all the people who got mail and caught up in the mail as Democrats, then Donald Trump needs to be ahead to say, stop all those votes.
Right, but that's what I'm worried about. Is the people who are voting in person are red.
No, I can say here we got Republicans that have voted already too.
But we could also say, if he's ahead, he's not going to want those votes counted. But if he's behind, he's going to want.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I also say that
hold on, Doug, you have to hold on because I'm going through a thing here, and this is part of it. He has to be behind. He has to be ahead, even a little bit, and none of this is showing any kind of scenario on that. So that's where I am at. That's where I don't even think that we're even going to have any chaos with the courts. And I think that this is something that Donald Trump is putting in their head: the paranoia, the fear. All that shit he's blasting into the system, and it's just none of that's going to even take place. That is my prediction. It's going to be a run, and Joe's going to be up on all these things, and we may have to wait for Wisconsin and all that. But if Texas turns or Florida, we only have one or two. It's just over, and he's up on all those. Yes, Doug.
All right. So a few things. One, everything has to go perfectly for him again. Things had to go perfectly for him in 2016. Literally perfectly. He won Michigan and Comey, and again, Carla Comey swung a whole shit ton of stuff. So what I'm gonna tell you is though that Biden has had a lead of a certain percentage, and it has been the most consistent one, the most consistent approval, whatever percentage you want to say above Trump.
Yeah.
Since the 1800s. The 1800s.
Oh, this is why he got impeached, because he was scared of Biden. But go on.
So the point is, it's Biden's approval and possible winning has been at 8 or 9% nationally. In certain districts, it's less. Some it's 4, some it's whatever, some it's even. But I'm just telling you, I am not saying that I think Trump's going to win, because 2016 fucking kicked me in the nuts so hard that I'm never going to fucking recover.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you're not the only one.
For him,
it shouldn't warp our thinking going forward.
Yeah. So, Rod, what were you going to say?
Well, I mean, looking at some of the pollsters, as Greg was hitting on them, a couple that I've seen, I mean, he needs to hold a 9 national, is what they're saying, for him to have enough to overcome what Trump had. But again, it gets down to the states. It really does. So people look at the national poll. National poll does not matter. It's going to be the state polls. And it's going to be where he can pull that weight from. And that's where the focus is going to be. And that's why he's going back to these other states where he's down in the state polls, because they know he's in trouble. His pollsters are telling him he's in trouble. That's why he's back in Texas. That's why he came to Ohio. That's why he's going to Wisconsin. These are states he should not have to go to at this point in the game. So those are the ones that are going to matter. And this is why he's already starting to prepare stuff, looking about votes, trying to get these states to lead on getting votes thrown out and everything like that, because he knows he's in trouble in those. So really the states are going to be the ones that have to set up, because you can win nationally and still lose, as we know from 2016, as far as
but the margins matter, though. The margins matter.
Yeah, for the national margin, they say about 9%. And one of the pollsters said, if we get this wrong, we're out of jobs. They said, one of the pollsters said on the news, we're out of jobs, and we mess up again.
But Rob, we're not in that era. We're not in that range where it could matter. But with all the voter suppression going on, we could inch our way
the Supreme fucking Court.
That margin of error is what I'm saying. Voter suppression could put us in that margin of error.
But the voter suppression isn't as big as some people think it, man. The whole tampering with the mail ballot, the postal, it's not as big as what. There's got a lot of people that are watching, but it's that fear mongering.
But there's a difference.
Carla.
But there's a difference between, there's a bunch of ballots stuck in the Miami post office, and the laws that have been passed in the past 2 weeks that have said we're not going to count a single thing that shows up after November 3rd. They did that in Maine. They did that in other states too, where they just changed their minds all of a sudden at the last minute, going, no. It doesn't matter when you put it in the mail. We're only going to count it if we literally got it by that day. That's a big enough scale to freak me out.
That can kill some. Yeah, that's why some people are going to the ballot box now. But some of the courts have already stepped in and said, no, that's wrong. We're going to go ahead and count them. Go ahead and mail. And that's why Trump's pissed off this weekend, because some states are like, no. So he's trying to get it to his conservative. That's why you talk about packing the courts, as he started out with. That's why Trump packed the courts, because he's all these districts. He tries to get to Circuit 5 or whatever the Republican is. Because if one of them says yes, then he can use that for everybody else. So he's already packed the courts.
What do the pollsters say about Trump eventually going to jail? Can we just have him in jail? I just want him
to be a good prop bet on that.
Yes.
I want his phone taken away, and I want him in an orange suit that matches his orange fucking face. That's what I want.
One positive note on this, and I want to mention it. Remember during the springtime, Wisconsin went through the pandemic vote. Remember, the Supreme Court forced us to vote.
Yep.
But what people forget is that they did the same thing there, which is they said, "Oh yeah, you guys can we can submit ballots later," and then the Supreme Court came in and said, "No, it's election day," and Wisconsin the Democrat won by 55%, which rarely happens here because people were motivated and they knew that they were trying to fuck them over. So I'm hoping that America has this overall, like, we're getting fucked over. We're going to outvote you people so much that you can't do anything. And that's what we did in Wisconsin. And I'm hoping that goes.
And that's what the early voting is proving.
Yeah.
That's what.
Okay, can I say from a New York perspective, my wife and I walked to where our normal polling station is, the one we've done for 10 years. Walk there, not a polling station anymore. No notification.
Mm-hmm.
We had a mailer saying go vote here on this day.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we looked up. We were fortunate enough. We had cell phones where we could have internet access. It was 1.5 miles away from where we were. We had walked to the polling station. I said, let's walk back home. I'll drive. My wife's like, no, let's go just walk. And so walking is good. Walking is exercise. Let's go do it. We get there. It isn't. We're in a line.
Yeah.
Okay. So it took us 2 hours to get in the boat.
Yeah. Wow.
And so my wife and I walked 6 miles, all told, to go there and go home. 2 hours. So what I think is interesting is like the amount of people who are there to vote. Vote early. So in New York State, you can vote early for a week.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the more people that vote, that's a good thing.
I think so too.
That's a good thing. So listen, if everybody comes in and everybody votes and everybody's vote is tallied and it's a Republican that gets into office, guess what? Then you earned that vote. You earned all the people fucking standing in line. You earned all the people walking. You earned all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you kind of earned it. I can go to gerrymander, but I won't. But let me ask you this: am I the only one that did like just the official ballot box? Did everybody else go vote in person?
Honestly, Rod, I wish I would have done that because the people that went up there like, oh, just go to the front of the line and drop that shit in. I'm like, motherfucker, I should have done that. I was like, yeah.
Because I did mine, which was good. In Kentucky, actually, they send you an email letting you know your vote's been received and processed, which was nice. I
put mine in the mail.
I haven't voted yet, and I'm doing it on November 3rd because...
Well, the other problem with November 3rd is how some of these lines are stacking up. That's where you're going to have issues, too. Because not me. For you, you're fine. But some people can't afford to be there for a couple hours. They got a job to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be issues. So hopefully those people go early. And then Texas, the only thing I'm going to say is Texas is the one state you definitely got to watch. Because that fucker in a wheelchair, I don't care if he's in a wheelchair or not.
And
that fucker needs to get rolled in. He needs to get rolled into the Gulf. He has one ballot box for every fucking county. One of the counties is bigger than 5 fucking states.
It needs to be rolled.
Yes. I would like to see that fucking governor for Texas like shrung up like a goddamn fucking pinata doll and have people beat the shit out of him for fucking 5 hours. Because that's
all right. So we've turned really negative. So what, James?
All right, can I have one?
Can
we all agree that we're going to campaign for President's Day to go away and make Voting Day a national holiday next year?
Thank you. That's where I was going.
It's absolutely privileged to be able to stand in line for that long. It's absolutely terrible that not everybody's able to do that. My 80-year-old stepdad did it for 2.5 hours, but that was probably as long as he probably could have. But even in COVID, like that's ridiculous. My work decided to declare it a meeting-free day. So they said, whatever you're doing, you're working from home anyway. If you can't get back in time for whatever meeting, just don't schedule any meetings that whole day. Like, just don't do it.
Nice.
But I think that should be a national holiday, and I think we should stop celebrating old white guys. So that's
And if you think your vote doesn't matter, just think about all the people trying to take it away.
100%. Yep. Let's end on that.
Yes.
Wrap.
I want to thank you. I also was going to say when I was trying to wrap before, but Doug wanted us to go further. Yes, cool. Is that like I want to have another politics conversation, but I don't. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Are you going to have one on election night, like to see how things are going, have people around?
No.
Can I answer that, please? You have a private Zoom going on. You have a private Zoom. So if you if you want to come to my private Zoom because Doug Ziegler's all mad about it for some reason, you can just hit me up on DM. Private Zoom, no.
Private Zoom is great. That's fine.
Well, there's no crying and voting.
I'm not trying to be on
there's
camera.
gonna be crying. I'm gonna be crying.
Right. So I again, I thank you guys. I thank our former panelists. We had some great ones tonight. We had a great conversation. The comments were off the hook. Doug, this is great. Like I said, though, I don't know if we want to have another one. Maybe we can all just make it all like calm again. We don't have to.
I'm always down for a political discussion.
But
inauguration day conversation.
I released Steam. Oh, maybe. Okay.
I'll be crying.
I released my Steam though. Doug and I wanted to release some Steam, so we did it. So thank you guys for everything. We are going to click end here, and